our phones off or put them on silent. Okay, everyone has to have a seat during the meeting. If there's no seats, we can open up a room for you in a little bit. Please, no standing or sitting only, but standing, no standing on the side. Thank you.
I'm gonna scrap.
So, buenas tardes, bienvenidas y bienvenidos a la Cámara de Supervisores y Supervisoras de San Francisco. Voy a interpretar lo que dijo el alguacil. No se pueden quedar de pie, todas y todos tienen que tener un asiento, no se puede reservar asientos. Los teléfonos celulares, por favor, se los pueden apagar o poner en vibración. Si están de acuerdo con algo o están en desacuerdo, no se puede expresar oralmente. Si están de acuerdo, por favor, levanten las manos. Si no les gusta, dedos abajo. No se puede comer. Aquí tampoco. Si hay mucha gente aquí y no hay sillas, vamos a ponerlos y ponerlas en otra aula, por favor. Muchas gracias. Y de nuevo, equipo de interpretación está ahí afuera.
各位下午好，歡迎嚟臨三藩市市參市嘅例會嘅。咁今日咧就係如果你進入會場嘅話，你要關閉你嘅手機，同埋咧或者你嘅電子設備對所有都要關閉，同埋你響會議廳入邊係唔可以站立或者係放聲討論嘅。咁同埋你係禁止食物帶入嚟食嘅。另外咧就係如果你係需要傳譯服務嘅話，請你響出邊會議廳外面咧係有一個攤位咧，你係可以領取呢個同聲傳譯嘅器材。多謝。
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors meeting of October 20th, 2015. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam President. Supervisor Avalos?
Present.
Avalos present. President Breed? Breed present. Supervisor Campos?
Present.
Campos present. Supervisor Christensen?
Present.
Christensen present. Supervisor Cohen?
Present.
Cohen present. Supervisor Farrell?
Present.
Farrell present. Supervisor Kim?
Here.
Kim present. Supervisor Marr?
Here.
Marr present. Supervisor Tang?
Present.
Tang present. Supervisor Wiener?
Present.
Wiener present. Supervisor Yee?
Here.
Yee present. Madam President, all members are present.
Thank you, and we are joined also today by Mayor Ed Lee. And ladies and gentlemen, can you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Colleagues, are there any changes to the September 8th or September 15th regular board meeting minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve those minutes? Motioned by Supervisor Cohen, seconded by Supervisor Farrell. Madam Clerk, colleagues, can we take this without objection? Without objection, those meeting minutes will pass after public comment. Okay, Madam Clerk, we have a special order with the mayor today. Can you please read the item?
Yes, the first item of business is the policy discussion between the Honorable Mayor Edwin Lee and the Board of Supervisors. The mayor may provide initial remarks for up to 5 minutes. The president will recognize the supervisor from District 10, Supervisor Cohen, who submitted a question for today's discussion. Follow-up questions are in order as long as the entire discussion does not exceed 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, welcome. You have opening remarks.
Thank you, President Breed and supervisors, and thank you to the audience that's come here today. First, I'd like to begin by thanking President Obama, Senator Feinstein, Senator Boxer, and others for their leadership in defeating earlier today an ill-conceived bill in the U.S. Senate that would have punished sanctuary cities like San Francisco. I firmly believe our city's sanctuary city law makes us safer and helps us support our immigrant communities. I'd also like to take some time to talk about two of our city's most pressing issues, housing and homelessness. Just last week, I joined President Breed and Leader Pelosi to show our HUD Secretary, Julian Castro, our plans to revitalize 4,500 units of housing, public housing, starting with 200 family units at the Robert B. Pitts Apartments. He saw firsthand how we are transforming dilapidated housing from isolated poverty housing to thriving communities. Phase 1 alone will, of what we call the RAD, the Rental Assistance Demonstration Project, will span across 15 housing sites with nearly $700 million of investment. And we're doing this without displacing any tenants. To put this in perspective, it would take the Housing Authority over 50 years to provide the kind of capital improvements that will now happen in just the next 3 years. The RAD helps us reach our commitment to build and rehab over 30,000 units of housing by 2020, with 1/3 permanently affordable and half within reach of the middle class. That's why we are sending a $310 million housing bond that won't raise property taxes to voters, that includes investments in rebuilding public housing, building needed affordable housing, and for the first time helping our middle class. We also showed Secretary Castro our first of its kind navigation center, a place that encapsulates our compassionate, comprehensive approach to homelessness, so he could see the lives that are being changed by getting our residents off the streets and into supportive housing and services. These are both fast becoming national models. And that's why we are expanding the Navigation Center. It's a place that we are reducing hospital stays and jail time, increasing access to stabilized services and treatment, and saving lives. And in just the first 6 months of the Navigation Center, we helped 210 people off the streets. It all started with an anonymous donor. Now we need more donors to step up so we can expand and continue to provide counselors, meals, safe shelter. That's why I announced the Navigation Partnerships Fund. It allows the city to match philanthropic dollars to fund the Navigation Center with built-in accountability to our donors, and speeds us along the path to helping more homeless people. It is our hope that this Navigation Center will transform our ability to help people exit the streets for good. So let's get to Supervisor Cohen's question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, at this time, I'd like to recognize the supervisor from District 10, Malia Cohen.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Welcome back to the chamber, Mr. Mayor. My question is very simple, I think clean and straightforward. We've all watched news accounts across the entire country, protests as well as civil disobedience actions, not just happening in the eastern coast and in the southern states, but also here in our city, as well as the Bay Area. The Chronicle recently reported a study of the income gap disparity within the African American community. And my question, as I mentioned earlier, is very simple and straightforward. It's, do Black lives matter or do all lives matter? Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Black lives matter. I'll say it again. Black lives matter. It's important to keep saying this and these words because in America, we know we don't have a fully equal society. All across our country, African American children don't have the access to the same education opportunities. African American men are jailed 6 times the rate. And African Americans have a harder time finding a job, even with the exact same qualifications. We know these statistics, we've heard them, we've read them, and these numbers matter. We struggle with these same inequalities here in San Francisco. But I'm optimistic, and I believe the city has the moral compass and the political will to do something about it, and we are. As mayor, I have made it a central focus of my administration to lift people up and out of poverty. That's why I'm focused on my shared prosperity and affordability agenda, and that starts with creating opportunities. First, economic opportunity. The largest inequality is between someone who has a job and someone who doesn't. Even with one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country, we must make sure people in underserved areas get access to these jobs. That's why we created City Build and Tech SF to provide job training to help our most underserved residents. And we are supporting local hires so our own residents have opportunities for good-paying middle-class jobs. That's why we created more than 7,000 job opportunities for our youth through Youth Jobs Plus this past summer, and focused on our young people from underserved communities. We need to ensure equality of opportunity from lifelong perspectives, from a cradle to college and career and beyond. We're supporting our public schools at historic levels and have called in our philanthropic partners like Salesforce to help. We are committed to President Obama's My Brother and Sister's Keeper initiative, and we launched Black Family Day, an annual celebration of African American educational achievement and success. In fact, I was delighted to join 500 families at Mission High as they participated in parenting workshops, receiving scholarships, and even received computers so that their children have the technology they'll need to succeed. This is also about housing affordability. It's a challenge for everyone in San Francisco, and particularly for African Americans. We are building or rehabilitating 30,000 units by 2020, with 1/3 permanently affordable and half within reach of the middle class. We are also completely transforming our public housing. Above all, our communities must be safe. And I'm proud of the work we've done together through the Interrupt, Predict, and Organize initiative to interrupt cycles of violence, use predictive policing, and organize the community to keep our city safe. One homicide is too many, and we know we are making a difference. But to have a safe city, we must also ensure we have a diverse police department. Our San Francisco Police Department recently reinstated the Cadet Academy to recruit young people of color and train them as they attend college, with hopes that they'll join our police force. And the President has convened a task force on 21st century policing, which made 38 recommendations, and our San Francisco Police Department is in the process of implementing each and every one of them. These are just some of the strategies we are employing to close the inequality gaps, but our work is far from over. And let me take the opportunity to say this. I know that Black Lives Matter goes well beyond just the economic challenges. And that is why I'm also proud to say that in the appointments of the City Administrator, the General Manager of Public Utilities Commission, the Public Works Department, the Juvenile Justice Department, my Criminal Justice Advisor, our challenged families, and a whole host of very important positions to help me manage the city, I've also made sure African Americans have the opportunity to serve and manage the city with me. That is why it's important for elected officials like all of us to utter these words: Black Lives Matter. I look forward to joining Supervisor Breed and you, Supervisor Cohen, continuing our work together to make sure African American families succeed in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for joining us, Mr. Mayor. Madam Clerk, can you please read the consent agenda?
Items 2 and 3, the consent calendar, are considered routine. If a member objects, an item may be removed and considered separately.
Seeing no names on the roster, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On items 2 and 3, Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos. Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim.
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 11 ayes.
These items are finally approved and passed unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 4 is an ordinance to appropriate $5 million from wastewater enterprise funds designated for general reserve in the Public Utilities Commission wastewater enterprise to pay the claim settlements, legal expenses, and related costs due to the expenses incurred as a result of the December 2014 rainstorms in fiscal years 2015-16.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this ordinance is passed unanimously on the first reading. Item 5, please.
Item 5, resolution to approve an amendment to the agreement between the Department of Public Health and the Bayview Hunters Point Foundation for Community Improvement for Behavioral Health Services and increasing the total contract by $12.4 million for a total contract amount of $41.6 million for the period of July 1st through December 31st, 2017.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Item 6, please.
Item 6 is a resolution to approve 3 emergency public work contracts under Administrative Code Section 660 with Alta Consulting Services, Sierra Detention Systems, and Siemens Industry to design, repair, and upgrade the electronic security system for county jails numbers 1 and 2 with total contract amounts not to exceed $1.1 million.
Same House, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Item 7, please.
Item 7 is a resolution to approve the amended and restated Memorandum of Understanding with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and other Bay Area transit agencies for the future governance and operation of the Clipper program through June 30th, 2025.
Same House, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 8 is a resolution to authorize the lease of real property located at 598 Portola Drive with Twin Peaks Petroleum through doing business as Twin Peaks Auto Care, successor in interest to Michael Garib for an initial 5-year term at a base rent of approximately $101,000.
Same House, same call. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, President Bree. Colleagues, before you is a resolution to authorize a lease agreement to preserve an extended lease of Twin Peaks Auto Care, a family-run gas station located on Portola Drive. Many of you have stepped up to fight and save small businesses in your own district, as I have. Twin Peaks Auto Care is a real community gem, and as we have seen gas stations after gas stations shut down in recent years, this one is one of the last remaining independent gas stations in San Francisco that serves the neighborhoods of Midtown Terrace, Glen Park, Diamond Heights, Mariloma, and Forest Hills. The operators of Twin Peaks Auto Care, Mike and Nancy Garib, took over the management of the station in 1985, over 30 years ago. It isn't often that a gas station becomes a real community hub that plays an active role in the neighborhood's life. However, my office received hundreds of emails and phone calls about this gas station when it was being threatened to lose its lease. And I personally listened to numerous stories about the community role that this particular business plays. Because of the commitment to the community by Twin Peaks Auto Care, my office worked with the Department of Real Estate and the Garib family to ensure that they will stay open for another 5 years with the option to extend their lease for another 5 years. I want to thank the budget analyst for his thoughtful review of this lease agreement and the fact that the strong community support was noted in the report. Colleagues, this is a very important community-serving business, and I am very excited to stand here today to ask your support to save this valuable family-run business.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Colleagues, can we take this item, same House, same call? Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 9 is a resolution to authorize designated city officials to execute and file on behalf of the city any actions necessary for the purpose of obtaining state and federal financing assistance under various grant programs, including the fiscal year 2015 Urban Area Security Initiative Grant, the 2015 State Homeland Security Grant, and the 2015 Emergency Management Performance Grant, in addition to the 2015 Local Government Oil Spill Contingency Plan Grant programs.
Colleagues, can we take this item, same House, same call? Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Item 10.
Item 10 is a resolution to authorize the General Manager of the Public Utilities Commission to accept and expend an approximate $123,000 grant from the Solano County Water Agency to implement a regional water conservation program for a total award of up to approximately $986,000.
Same House, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Item 11, please.
Item 11 is a resolution to approve, in accordance with Section 147F of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, the issuance of tax-exempt bonds by the California Enterprise Development Authority in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $7 million to finance and refinance various capital facilities owned by Mission Resource Center.
Same House, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item, Madam Clerk, can you please call items 12 and 14 together?
Item 12 is a resolution to confirm the Board of Supervisors' support for the sanctuary city and due process for all ordinance, and to further urge the sheriff to immediately rescind his department-wide memorandum of March 13, 2015, regarding immigration and custom enforcement procedures, contact, and communication. Item 14 was referred without recommendation from the Government Audit and Oversight Committee. It is a resolution to oppose the scapegoating of immigrants and urging the rejection of the deportation-focused priority enforcement program.
Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, President Breed. So, colleagues, back in July, I introduced a package of public safety reforms, and in front of us today is a resolution that I authored that is one of the components of those reforms. When the incident that happened earlier this summer garnered national attention, I agree with everyone here that it brought out the worst nationally in anti-immigrant sentiment and a litany of misinformation about our city's sanctuary policy and due process for all ordinances. We saw a very public back and forth between the sheriff, our mayor, and our deputy sheriff's association, ending with a request from the sheriff for both a public hearing and with the mayor to discuss these policies, as well as legislative clarity from the Board of Supervisors. And I join everyone in this room in hailing the rejection at Congress within the Senate of some of those Republican advocates who are trying to take away the sanctuary city policies of cities like San Francisco. What I don't believe we need in the aftermath of these tragedies is hysteria. And while I understand election year politics, what we've needed is a thoughtful look at what happened and a common sense approach to ensuring this situation will never happen again. I firmly believe that we have needed time to let cooler heads prevail and to take an objective look at the policies that may or may not need revisiting. One of those policies that I believe needs to be revisited and needs to be replaced is a sheriff's memorandum regarding communications within his own department that has made him the last and ultimate authority in deciding whether his department will communicate at all with federal or state authorities. So in front of us today is a resolution that does a few things. First of all, it supports our existing sanctuary city policy that has been a pillar of our public safety policy in San Francisco for decades, as well as supporting the due process for all ordinance that Supervisor Avalos authored in 2013. One of the important pillars of the sanctuary city policy codified in federal law is discretion given to our law enforcement personnel to communicate under certain circumstances. Both our sanctuary city and due process ordinances seek to proscribe limitations in certain circumstances. But I will say this, I do believe it is simply impossible to proactively legislate every single situation that our public safety personnel and leaders will encounter in their capacity as law enforcement agents. There's no way as we as a board or the mayor could have anticipated the circumstances surrounding the individual's presence on the streets of San Francisco this summer, and there are surely to be similar circumstances that are unforeseen in the future. This individual, who is set to be deported in a different city, was brought back on a 20-year-old marijuana possession charge, which no law enforcement person in the city of San Francisco right now would prosecute or anticipate would be prosecuted. And although he was held for over 2 weeks in our county jail afterwards, no one has even talked about that. There's no way we could have legislatively predicted what was going to happen, and we won't be able to predict every single circumstance in the future. It is right for us as a board and appropriate to make sure that we prescribe those circumstances such as sanctuary city and due process for all, where we restrict what can be done within our law enforcement departments. But some form of discretion is necessary for the public safety of our own residents and part of the job of our public safety officials. If it's handled well, it should be applauded, and if it isn't, it should be criticized. However, the sheriff's memorandum earlier this year completely took that out of the hands of his own department. It took our sanctuary and due process ordinances a step further, unilateral decision, and I believe a strong violation of our existing laws in San Francisco. Now, despite some of the actions and comments, I've taken the time to meet and hear concerns from some of the immigrants' rights advocates and organizations and understand that they are opposed to rescinding this policy and therefore my resolution. But I also understand that they were part of the group that drafted it with the sheriff. And while I respect their opinions, I believe replacing the sheriff's memorandum, which prohibits any communication on behalf of those under his department, flies in the face of the best interests of public safety for all San Franciscans. There have been also some discussions about whether this resolution calls for proactive notification or supports PEP. Obviously, none of those which are true. And some recent questioning around the purpose of this resolution, and it's specifically in response to the sheriff's request for legislative direction at the Board of Supervisors that he asked for in writing this summer. And this is what we have in front of us. What we do firmly believe is that we should never be afraid to revisit policies of our own or look at those other internal policies that affect public safety here in San Francisco. We've needed a time of calm and a time to assess the facts at hand. And from my perspective, the simple fact of the matter is the sheriff's policy goes beyond our local laws that we have enacted as a board and not in the best interest of public safety. Now, I want to say also, I thank those at GAO the other week that sent this item forward, Supervisor Breed and Supervisor Yee. I also want to thank Supervisor Yee for working together on this. I will say up front that I am supportive of and will be supporting the amendments that he is offering today. And certainly colleagues hope to have your support as well.
Madam President, before the next speaker, I'll remind the members of the public that there is no standing in the chamber that is pursuant to an approved board rule. I believe sufficient time has been granted by the President to allow you to make your point. Madam President.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, good afternoon, everyone that's joined us here today. Through the President, I'd like to ask Supervisor Farrell to respectfully consider tabling this resolution. I frankly don't think that this urging resolution is necessary or a good use of our time. As elected leaders on this body, we make difficult policy decisions each and every week. And look around you. A non-binding resolution can only garner media attention on this issue, and I think it's harmful to public policy. Now, what message are we sending to undocumented folks who are witnesses or victims of a crime today? Are we willing to tell them that they're safe? Are we telling them because we can't agree on what policy should be implemented that they are going to take a chance with their lives and their family lives by coming forward? Can we talk? We can talk all we want about improving public safety in this building, but if people in our communities don't trust law enforcement, no level of police staffing is going to make our communities safe. All of us in this room agree that the death of Catherine Steinle was senseless and tragic. But what many of us disagree is on the role, if any, that San Francisco's existing sanctuary and due process for all policy played in this event. If members of this board no longer think that due process for all ordinance is sufficient or that sanctuary city policy needs updating, then let's talk about that rather than grandstanding on non-binding resolutions. The sheriff clearly believes that this policy he has put in place is the right one. Passing an urging resolution directing the sheriff to do something he clearly doesn't agree with will not change anything. We cannot allow one event to dictate 25 years of our city's policies towards undocumented immigrants in our city. And more importantly, we cannot allow hateful conservative news stations to drive how we respond to incidents in our city. I'm not afraid of Fox News, and they don't influence how I make my policy decisions here in San Francisco. So, Supervisor Farrell, I asked you privately, and I'm asking you publicly to respectfully, again, to consider tabling this item so that we can work on a real policy issue and something that protects all of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Avalos.
Was that a motion? You motion to table?
Yes, that was a motion to table.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Avalos.
Madam President,
1 second, Supervisor Avalos.
Madam President, that was a motion to table item 14?
No, yes.
Item 14, okay.
Item 12, excuse
12.
me.
Okay.
Item 12.
Item 12. Thank you.
Thank you.
So is there a discussion on that motion, or do we go right to is there a table debate?
Well, you were next on the roster, so if you I won't take the vote until every member of the board's had a chance to speak.
Okay, thank you. I do appreciate the comments from Supervisor Cohen. These are issues, items 12 and 14, that directly impact a large part of our population. I live in a part of San Francisco that has over 50% of our population is foreign born. There are many people who feel very, very strongly about the protections we have in place, about our sanctuary city ordinance, and about our due process for all ordinance. And I'll be talking about those both in a moment. First, I wanted to tell a story of one of the residents who is greatly impacted by the over-enforcement of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, ICE, under the ESCOM and now PEPCOM program. Can Yadira Sanchez please stand up? Yadira? I'm going to tell you about Yadira's story. It is because of stories like hers that I believe we are all safer if there is a clear separation between local law enforcement and immigration. Yadira Sanchez is an organizer and undocumented leader with the East Bay Immigrant Youth Coalition. A month ago, ICE agents raided the home of Yadira's grandfather in Los Angeles and placed him in handcuffs. He had been the victim of a fraudulent immigration lawyer in the 1990s and had a deportation order he did not know about. He would qualify for President Obama's new Deferred Action Program, DAPA. When Yadira and her family tried to contact ICE, they provided inconsistent information. That would be ICE. They tried to deport him before the lawyer could even submit his paperwork. In fact, her grandfather, her abuelito, was on a deportation bus headed to Mexico. ICE released him only because of community pressure. ICE claimed Yadira's grandfather was a priority for deportation, but it turns out they confused him with another man with the same name. That shows why upholding due process is so vitally important. And in her own words, Yadira says, "We are not just fighting for my abuelito, we are fighting for all elders and loved ones who are being attacked, criminalized, and scapegoated by ICE." And I want to thank Yadira for sharing her story. And I wish there was something we could do to really change what is happening at the federal level. In terms of how their enforcement of our immigration policies continues. We've tried things here in San Francisco to actually protect the immigrant community over the years. And our first effort was in 1989 when we created the Sanctuary City Policy. The Sanctuary City Policy at that time was really responding to the number of immigrants who were fleeing a lot of war-torn countries that we were seeing in Central America. There were specific conditions that we were trying to address at that time. And this protection that Sanctuary City provided really did bring a lot of people into the light of being more involved in civic life here in San Francisco because they felt protected, that the local law enforcement wasn't going to turn them over to federal officials. Let's move forward about 20 years, and 20 years later, there's a new federal program. Which didn't exist at the time in 1989. The ESCOM program was created at that time, which was basically using fingerprints that matched in our jails into a database where customs immigration or ICE would determine whether someone was undocumented or not. And you learn from Yadira's experience that her grandfather was actually misconfused with someone else who perhaps was undocumented. These mistakes happen all the time. And the ESCOM ESCOM program created a dragnet across the country where people were deported, got into the ICE system, were deported, and families were torn apart. This created a huge amount of distrust between the communities, immigrant communities, who actually rely on law enforcement for their own safety, and it also tied the hands of law enforcement from being able to do the investigations that they need to do to make our communities safer. And we knew, along with about 350 other communities or cities and counties across the country, that this was not the way to go, that we had to have local protections to prevent this kind of deportation system from happening. And so we created here in San Francisco the Due Process for All ordinance in response to the ESCOM program. And we wanted to make sure that we had that clear separation. And I really thank you, colleagues, for working together to make that resolution, or that ordinance, pass here in San Francisco. It actually resulted in other cities having very strong ordinances on their own as well. But what's happened with the federal government is now they've changed the program, or they're proposing to change the program with a new program called PEP. PEP stands for Priority Enforcement Program, and now instead of like the former program would urge the sheriff's department to detain someone past their release date, now they're just simply asking the sheriff to notify, to pick up the phone and call ICE saying that a person in their custody is ready for pickup. If our community saw that the sheriff's department was picking up the phone to tell ICE that an undocumented person was ready for pickup, it would completely undermine the relationships that we try to create with Due Process for All, completely undermine the trust that we were trying to create within our city, between our immigrant community and law enforcement, and it would make all of our efforts over the years meaningless. And that's exactly what Supervisor Farrell's resolution does. It comes out of an effort to say that the sheriff should pick up the phone with wide discretion to talk to ICE, to tell ICE that someone's ready for pickup. That, to me, is completely counter to what we were trying to achieve here in San Francisco. But more than that, as Supervisor Cohen was talking about, we were seeing pressure from all across the country on San Francisco after the Kate Steinle incident. Some of us were hounded in our own communities, at our front doors. The Fox cameras were all over the city looking for us. We had a Fox faux reporter in the board chambers, all trying to draw up and whip up a lot of hysteria against the immigrant community and against the policies here that protect the immigrant community. And I was really hoping that here in San Francisco, we would be immune to using the immigrant community who is being scapegoated at the national levels as a political football to score points. But that's exactly what this resolution does. This resolution is about targeting the sheriff who is not very popular here in City Hall, and perhaps not popular in San Francisco, but it was an effort to actually smear the sheriff. The original way that this resolution by Supervisor Farrell, item number 12, was put forward, it was called a gag order. There's nothing non-political about the term gag order. If you look at the sheriff's memo, there's nothing in it that says the word gag. I don't see the word gag once in this memo. What I do see is there's language here in the memo which says that we should not be sharing information with ICE in accordance with our sanctuary city policy and in accordance with our Due Process for All ordinance. The memo also says under what conditions that deputy sheriffs should talk with ICE, and it's really going through legal within the sheriff's department, and legal as part of the sheriff's department would have the ability to determine whether communication happens or not. There's nothing about a gag order in here, but we're talking about rescinding any policy that's in place that says when the sheriff should have discretion, give them broad discretion to talk to ICE. Then we are completely undermine all of our efforts in the Due Process for All ordinance and in our communities to protect immigrants against the arbitrary deportations that would happen once we open the floodgates of notification. I am totally opposed to this. This resolution has no point whatsoever. Recrafted sanctuary city ordinance, and it's still on the books today, 26 years later. We crafted it to withstand the shifting sands of politics, and we crafted due process for all to withstand the shifting winds of politics. And so we should not be undermining our efforts with any resolution, however symbolic. And more, what we should be doing is thinking about how we can actually tailor our due process for all ordinance to meet the new requirements or the new program under ICE that calls for notification, because currently, right now, due process for all is silent on that. And that's a hole that I expect the federal government is going to exploit, and I expect that in the political realm here in San Francisco, people would want to exploit as well along the lines of this resolution. So I really appreciate Supervisor Cohen's urging or motion to table. I have seconded, and I hope that we can get this off the books today, that we never even attempted this type of resolution before us.
Thank you, Super.
Madam President, through the President to the audience, I'll just remind you of an approved board rule 1.3.1, which does prohibit the applause or vocal expression in support or opposition of items before the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Avalo. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, Madam President. I have to begin, Supervisor Cohen, by addressing you and simply saying that I don't think that anyone can really say what needed to be said better than you have. So I'm just going to rest with what you said. And I want to thank you for understanding and capturing what this is about for so many of us, not only in San Francisco but throughout the country, and that someone who's not an immigrant herself would be able to do that and understand that is very moving on a very personal note. So it means a great deal to me, and in the spirit in which I think you made your motion, I would once again ask my friend Mark Farrell to consider withdrawing this resolution. I don't think that there was any ill intent here, but I think what happens with these types of efforts sometimes is that whether it's intended or not, it comes across a certain way. And I think that to the extent that we have an opportunity to work in a united fashion to address some of these issues in a thoughtful way, that we have an opportunity to do that today in a unified way. So I would once again ask Supervisor Farrell to withdraw it, and if that doesn't happen, I certainly will be proud to join in the motion to table. The only thing that I would add is simply to note why I have introduced the second resolution. And it was really done in the context of a resolution that was introduced by Supervisor Farrell, but also in the context of what's happening at the national level. And, you know, the New York Times, interestingly enough, just this weekend had an editorial on this issue and talked about sort of what was happening around immigration and the scapegoating that Donald Trump and others were doing around it. And what the New York Times was doing was asking local jurisdictions to bring some sanity to this topic by reaffirming their commitment to sanctuary. And it is in that spirit that today we are, through my resolution, reaffirming our commitment to sanctuary by saying we in San Francisco will not participate in the Priority Enforcement Program, PEP. And the reason for that, and I can make a lot of arguments, but I think the only way that I can provide justice to the reason is to ask Maria Hernandez, who I think is in the audience, to please stand up. I want to talk to you about her story, because her story is the story, like so many people, who would be impacted if we went down the path of participating in PEP. Maria Hernandez has a very tragic story, and the fact that we have gotten to a point where Maria can trust law enforcement is a testament to who we are as a city. For more than 10 years, Maria was trapped in an abusive relationship. In fact, I don't know how you can just say this, but she explains how she almost lost one of her legs because her abuser tried to run her over with a car. She was afraid during this whole 10 years to call the police because she was afraid that her daughters would be left without a mom. And that's because of the issue of immigration. Because by calling that, somehow she would end up getting deported. Maria says, I am here and I am alive. This story, it's not just my story, but of many of my comrades who go through this. Maria now works at Mujeres Unidas y Activas. She works with hundreds of domestic violence survivors. She doesn't want more women to be isolated without the resources to call for help. She doesn't want more women to become a part of those statistics where the children are put in foster homes because their moms were deported because of collaboration with ICE. Maria is fighting so that immigrant families live like any other family with dignity and respect. I think that the best way that we can honor the sacrifice and the suffering of Maria and her family is by reaffirming our commitment to sanctuary today and saying no to the priority enforcement program, no to PEP. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Campos. Supervisor Marr.
Thank you. I wanted to also speak in support of Supervisor Cohen's motion to table the Farrell resolution. I wanted to thank the 70-plus community coalition of organizations and immigrant rights and civil rights groups that have called for solutions and safety, not scapegoating. I know there's a number of amendments that are going to move forward in a moment, so I'm looking forward to those discussions. But I'm in support of the community's efforts to have no amendments and to have strong support for Supervisor Campos' resolution. As the public can probably see, we are doing our best to tell human stories and to humanize the lives and the experiences of immigrant communities. Supervisor Campos and I were recently in Washington, D.C. at the White House with a gathering of immigrant community leaders and organizations. And I believe that though these are non-binding resolutions, we are discussing, as Emily Green from the Chronicle has mentioned in today's paper, all eyes are on San Francisco as we look at this issue to defend our immigrant rights policies in the city. I would like to ask if Daniel Meyer could stand up. He's a champion for youth empowerment, for environmental justice, and for our communities. But he's also another story of why San Francisco needs solutions and safer communities, not scapegoating and separation of immigrants from their families and communities. Daniel Meyer, his story is compelling because it's a story of redemption and of restorative justice. It's because of stories like this that I believe that make our communities safer if there's a clear separation between the local law enforcement that we have in our city and federal immigration agents. Daniel emigrated from Macau to the U.S. at the age of 2 years old as a permanent resident. As a young man, he made serious mistakes and ended up serving 5 years in state prison for armed robbery and kidnapping. Definitely issues that he's remorseful of, and he's shown that he's turned his life around in the last 14 to 20 years. For the past 14 to 20 years, 14 years, he's worked at the Berkeley Ecology Center, where he worked his way up to recycling manager. He's here with other leaders from the Berkeley Ecology Center and the environmental movement. He's also an instructor in a program that trains at-risk youth for jobs in the environmental sector. He's a green jobs advocate as well. But in June of this year, ICE picked Daniel up from his home, ripped him away from his community. He spent nearly 3 months from June till August being bounced around from different immigration detention centers. No one knows more of the horrible conditions in the centers than Daniel. Many of his family members and other community friends could not even contact him as he was incarcerated in these detention centers all over California. But after sustained community pressure from different organizations, not only those from the Ecology Center, but also the Asian Law Caucus, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, and others, Daniel was finally released on August 14th. But unfortunately, ICE continues to still see him as a quote-unquote priority for deportation, and like thousands of other people caught into the dragnet that Supervisor Avalos mentioned, he and many others still live in fear of being deported. I wanted to say that Daniel is a model community leader, a community builder. He's given back so much for what he's done as a youthful offender. His work in the community is that about strengthening community. And if we were to allow Supervisor Farrell and the various policies of anti-immigrant sentiments to move forward in San Francisco, we would see many great public servants like Daniel be deported and ripped from their communities. I wanted to just say, too, that for the 70-member coalition that's been out here over and over again, from 1989's demands that no human being is illegal to today's demands of no to scapegoating and no to the PEP program, I'm supportive and really appreciate Daniel and the community's efforts. Let's table this harmful resolution from Supervisor Farrell, and let's move forward as a city for immigrant rights and due process for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Marr. Supervisor Kim.
Thank you. And first of all, I just want to say ditto. Supervisor Cohen, who really expressed perfectly much of my sentiment around item number 12 that's before us today. I can't support a symbolic, non-binding resolution that casts doubts on our own policies that we have spent decades crafting and negotiating with our communities, with public safety experts, based on facts, best practices, and our experiences on what makes our city safer. We, as a legislative body, have been debating the policies that are before us for the last few decades, and it doesn't make sense that we throw that conversation away on a resolution that's not going to actually achieve San Francisco becoming a safer city. This is very personal for me. Members of my own family have been non-citizens in this country. They go to our public schools, they hold jobs, they pay taxes, and they aren't somehow more dangerous or violent because of their status. Status has no correlation to tendencies to criminal or violent behavior. But there is one common denominator in many of the violent homicides that we are seeing across the countries, and that is guns. We need gun control. We need laws that restrict guns that are easily stolen by cars. No one, not a citizen, non-citizen, or undocumented member of our community, should be able to easily access these types of weapons that cause so much stress, anxiety, sadness, and grief in our city and throughout our country. And so I think as we move forward to figure out how we can be a safer city, that we should actually look towards solutions that are going to get us there. I look forward to, and I will be supporting the motion to table today. I have a story as well, but I will only share it if we do not make it past this motion, and I have several other comments if we do have a discussion on item number 12.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, President Bree. First of all, I want to say that for item number 14, I'm fully in support of voting yes on that as it is written today without any amendments. I think it's a duplication of what other city leaders have already voted on, which is the DCCC, and it's something that is a resolution to reinforce what we already have. So that's what I will be doing. For item number 12, there's a part of me will always question or say to people, can we improve on what we have? There's always that possibility of improving, and in many ways, if the sheriff were to look at his memo, he may be able to improve. But this is, I think what's happening today and for the last few weeks is we're seeing that people are not necessarily in their fullest capacity of saying, well, let's think about this logically and see what we could do if we need to do anything. And whatever we're trying to do locally, the national media is whipping it up and making it very difficult for us to have a good discussion around this. So I really would urge my colleague, Supervisor Farrell, to accept the offer of continuing this or tabling this. I wanted to ask Maria Ayala, are you here? Maria, hi Maria. I want to tell her story because I think this is why all of us around the table in this chamber support the policies that we do have. You know, I'm going to. It is because of her stories like hers that I believe that we are all safer, and if there is a clear separation between local law enforcement and immigration. Maria is a survivor of domestic violence. And a few years ago, she witnessed a crime in the Tenderloin. An argument among 3 people got out of hand as one fell to the sidewalk and hit his head on the ground. Maria saw that he was bleeding from his head. No one else had witnessed the incident. She felt powerless and panicked and wanted to help. But when the police arrived, Maria was very afraid. She felt a chill rush through her body and along with her daughter. She ran. She has always regretted this. Maria doesn't want any other woman or any other domestic violence survivor to feel the same fear of the police because the police might be connected to ICE. Maria wants all women to have confidence to report crime and for the police to protect them. And this is a story, especially when I was working as executive director of WUI Children's Services, and we had 2 child care centers in the Tenderloin. This is a story that was duplicated over and over again. People coming to us and coming to me and saying, I was too afraid to step up because I didn't know what was going to happen. And we need to protect these people. We need to protect our society. So we need to support item number 14.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, President Beeg, and colleagues. I appreciate the discussion here. Just a few things before we have the votes, and it seems like there'll be support to continue or table this item. 3 things. First of all, to confuse this resolution with attacking either sanctuary city or due process, it does specifically the opposite. And to say that somehow we've worked on immigration policies for decades in San Francisco and this is going against the grain of that is completely not accurate. This resolution calls for the rescission of a memorandum that the sheriff issued in 2015. We could have proactively put this type of language in the due process for all ordinance that this specific board voted on in 2013 but did not do. There's a specific similar carve-out in our sanctuary city policy. So to confuse it is actually very inaccurate and disingenuous. This resolution specifically targets a memorandum that this sheriff issued earlier this year, I believe in March of 2015. Second of all, I do appreciate all of the stories. And as I've spoken with many folks in the immigrants' rights community, my family as well has a similar story. My mother is an immigrant from a different country, a very different group than is represented here today, but is from a German background. And if you want to talk about coming to San Francisco literally off of a boat as well, with the background that Germans had dating back to the wars in the mid-century, her immigrant story and that I grew up with in the German community here in San Francisco is very acute and very real as well. No one has a monopoly on their own immigrant story. We all have them here in San Francisco. We should be proud of them. But I think that people act as if there is a monopoly on these stories is inaccurate as well. And I will just say at the end, how this vote happens, I accept. But from my perspective, voting to continue this item or voting to table it is the exact same thing as voting to support Sheriff Mayor Karimi's order that his department cannot communicate under any circumstances with other law enforcement personnel. And if that's the desire of this board, personally, from a policy perspective, I am completely against it. I think his order flies in the face of public safety, and quite frankly, as a Board of Supervisors, we should be insulted because we did not consider it in 2013 or vote on it when we passed our Due Process for All ordinance, and he did this without even consulting us or bringing it to us. So if we want to stand by department heads that unilaterally enact policies that go above and beyond the laws that we enact here as a Board of Supervisors, I'll accept the vote, but I don't agree with it. And to vote for this, to table it, is the same to say no one should have picked up the phone this summer under even these remote circumstances that existed here in San Francisco. And I simply don't agree with that. I will accept the outcome, but from my perspective, the public safety of San Francisco residents always should come first.
Through the president to the members, normally a motion to table is not debatable, but with your consent, the president thought it was important to put these thoughts out on the floor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Supervisor Weiner.
Thank you, President Breed. Excuse me. I think we should vote on this measure on the merits, and people can vote however they want to vote. I don't see any reason to table it as opposed to voting on it, so I'm not going to support the motion to table. I also note that we got distributed to us a proposed amendment, I believe by Supervisor Yee, which I was glad to see because it seemed to me that was maybe moving us towards a little more common ground, understanding that there are some significant differences here. But I don't see any reason to table this as opposed to voting on it on the merits today. And we can do that with there's a lot of times when legislation comes before us, whether it's a resolution or an actual ordinance, that people have differences of opinion on. And it's pretty rare that we actually table that ordinance or resolution. We typically will just vote it up or down, so I will not be supporting the motion to table.
Thank you, Supervisor Weiner. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, Madam President. Just call the question so that we can vote on the motion to table.
Okay, so on the motion to table item number 12, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Supervisor Tang?
No.
Tang, no. Supervisor Weiner?
No.
Weiner, no. Supervisor Yee?
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos?
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed?
No.
Breed, no. Supervisor Campos?
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen?
No.
Christensen, no. Supervisor Cohen?
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell?
Nope.
Farrell, no. Supervisor Kim?
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr?
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 6 ayes and 5 noes with Supervisors Tang, Weiner, Supervisor Breed, Christensen, and Farrell in the dissent.
Okay, the motion to table item number 12 passes. Okay. Are there any other members of the board who have any comments regarding item number 14? Okay.
I believe item 14 has already been called, Madam Clerk.
That's correct, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
I'll recognize President Breed.
Thank you. Colleagues, I support this resolution as I have consistently supported Sanctuary City and San Francisco's efforts to protect immigrants in our community. I would just like to offer a brief clarifying amendment to ensure that this resolution comports with existing city law. There are certain limited exceptions codified in both the Sanctuary City Law, which passed over 20 years ago, and the Due Process Ordinance, which passed just 2 years ago. Those exceptions are designed to protect public safety, and since they are codified in San Francisco law, I think it's important that this resolution be consistent with them. So my amendment, which I passed out, simply says, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors calls upon the sheriff not to participate in the priority enforcement program, except as allowed in Administrative Code 12I.3 or 12H.2-1 because PEP is counter to San Francisco's values and to the principles of due process and city and county of refuge ordinances. Administrative Code 12H.2-1 is the public safety exception in the sanctuary city law, and Administrative Code 12I.3 is the public safety exception in the due process ordinance. The due process ordinance, which prohibits civil immigration detainers, is an easier example because it passed with most of us on the board. Supervisor Avalos introduced it in July of 2013. I was the original co-sponsor, and several of us worked on language to provide limited exceptions to the detainer ban to protect public safety. Those amendments were introduced at the full board on September 24th, 2013. Everyone on the board, including the author of today's resolution, supported those amendments. And everyone on the board, including the author of today's resolution, then supported the ordinance as amended. It's worth noting that similar exceptions exist under the States Trust Act, which was written by former Assemblymember Tom Amiano. Frankly, I think the exceptions in his legislation are far too broad, but I support the exceptions in San Francisco law, as has this board has done in the past. And I think it's important that this non-binding resolution comports with the binding laws that we already passed. So colleagues, I hope that you would support my amendments to this particular resolution, and that is a motion.
Is there a second to President Breed's motion? Seconded by Supervisor Christensen. Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you. I do appreciate the change that's been made in the proposed amendment from President Breed, and while I wasn't ready to support it today, it is consistent with our ordinance on due process for all, referencing that ordinance, and I'm okay with it. I could have gone either way, but I think it's important that we make a strong statement against PEP, but one that's already consistent with what we have on the books here in San Francisco.
Thank you, Supervisor Avalos. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, Madam President. I could go either way on this amendment in the sense that I think that what the amendment provides is already required. It's already a matter of law. So, along the lines of what Supervisor Yee noted, I will vote against this simply because I think it's unnecessary. It's already covered by the law. But I certainly appreciate the way in which this was presented. And I think in the end, whether this amendment passes or not, what's important about what we're doing here today is something that I think is extremely critical, which is that we in San Francisco will not be participating in PEP. And I can tell my colleagues that there are many jurisdictions throughout this state and throughout this country that are looking to what San Francisco does, including places like New York City, that is trying to figure out whether or not they're going to participate in PEP. And I know, for instance, that a similar effort to not participate in PEP has been introduced by Chuy Garcia in Cook County, Chicago. And I think that if San Francisco and Cook County join together in saying no to PEP, that this will send a very strong message to the rest of the country that we're not going to have local law enforcement become arms of immigration.
Thank you, Supervisor Campos. Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank Supervisor Campos for bringing this resolution forward. We voted essentially almost unanimously at the Democratic County Central Committee to go on record asking the Board of Supervisors or asking the city not to participate in PEP, and I was happy to support that amendment by Supervisor Campos, and I'll support this resolution here today. I know that this is an issue that has gotten an awful lot of attention nationally and locally, but as a city we have stood firm to make sure that we are not just protecting our immigrant communities, but embracing our immigrant communities, making sure that everyone knows that they are part of this community, and that means allowing people to contact law enforcement, to report crimes, to be witnesses without fear of being turned over for deportation. And so it was good when the federal government effectively withdrew secure communities. Unfortunately, they then replaced it with another program, which, though different, has some real challenges. So I'll be happy to support this resolution.
Thank you, Supervisor Weiner. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, President Bree, and I appreciate the way you presented your amendments. It was some of the amendments that we talked about at the committee was what I thought I was going to hear, and when I said that I wouldn't be supporting amendments, but because of your sensitivity towards this issue and the way you presented it, I will be supporting your amendment.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Campos.
Well, in the spirit of unanimity, given that I could go either way, I think in the end the outcome is the same. So in that spirit, I will be supporting it as well.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, with that on the amendment, can you please call the roll?
Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Weiner.
Aye.
Weiner, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos. Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim.
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Okay, the amendment passes unanimously. And on item number 14, as amended.
Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Weiner.
Aye.
Weiner, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim.
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 11 ayes.
The resolution is adopted unanimously as amended. Madam Clerk, can you please call the next item?
Item 13 is a resolution to reaffirm approval of the Clean Power SF updated 2015 implementation plan and statement of intent for a community choice aggregation program, including modifications consistent with the 2015 implementation plan.
Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, the resolution is adopted unanimously. And before we move on to the next item, Madam Clerk, are we doing a 2:30 or 3:30 commendation?
We have 2:30 commendation, Madam President.
Okay, so at this time, I will move to the 2:30 commendations, and I know that Supervisor Kim and Supervisor Yee both have commendations today. So Supervisor Kim.
Thank you, and I know my honoree actually couldn't come into the chambers because the chambers was full. So I just want to see if Sergeant Kwan and his family are able to come into chamber now. If not,
we can move to Supervisor Yee and allow him the opportunity to honor. Yours isn't here either?
Either of our honorees weren't allowed in because the chamber was full.
Okay. So we'll give them a few minutes to come into the chamber.
Great. Great. Oh, he's here. Oh, is your person here too?
Right. We'll wait.
Thanks. Oops.
Supervisor Kim, Supervisor Yi, it's been a few minutes. Are we ready to go?
I was waiting for you.
Oh, sorry.
I thought you were going to let us know.
Supervisor Kim.
I am happy to get started. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor today to be presenting a special commendation today to our very own Sergeant Patrick Kwan of the San Francisco Police Department, and also one of my favorite police stations, the Tenderloin Station. Sergeant Kwan is a veteran who has served on the force for 24 years, 10 of which have been in the Tenderloin District. He comes from a family of public servants, as his brother, Fred, is assigned to the Taraval Station. On September 20th, on a very warm Sunday evening, Sergeant Kwan was off duty and driving with his children near Golden Gate Park when he approached a vehicle and bicycle collision. He saw that the cyclist was laying on the ground, lifeless. He immediately jumped out of the car, called dispatch, and began CPR on the lifeless young man. Even when it looked hopeless, Sergeant Kwan never gave up. He continued CPR until the young man literally started breathing again. Through his determined efforts, Sergeant Kwan saved someone's life. When we talk about what it means to serve and protect, when we talk about what we expect and want from our men and women in blue, Sergeant Kwan exemplifies all of those ideals, not just many of those ideals. Every single day in my district, our officers are serving and protecting the most vulnerable and the most in need, and they often do not expect or receive any recognition for their service. And I just have to give a special shout out to the Tenderloin Station, who I know work tirelessly in our neighborhood and care deeply about our residents in the neighborhood. Every single day, though, there are officers like Sergeant Kwan who do go above and beyond. When they're off the clock, even with their children in the car, that they jump into action. Sergeant Kwan is a hero because he stopped. He saved another human being's life and jumped to action. And not many of us can add that to our list of accomplishments. I have to say, it was quite challenging to get Sergeant Kwan here today, to be recognized even, but I'm so glad that you came here along with your family and your children, your lovely wife, Patricia Kwan, of 20 years, and your children who I know came from school to see their father be honored today for doing truly heroic Superman work. So thank you for joining us today so that we can honor him. So I just would ask the chamber to please give a round of applause to Sergeant Kwan. And since it was so much effort to get you here, Ivy Lee and my staff, I know, spent weeks convincing you and your family to come, I thought that we would make it even more embarrassing for you. I want to ask your boss, Captain Ewens, and Police Commissioner Victor Huang to come up and say a few kind words as well. We're trying to make it as painful as possible.
I'm going to make it painful for you. When I was told that, I'm sorry, I have a cold. When I was told that one of my officers did this act, I wasn't surprised it was him. He's a very good sergeant. He was an excellent officer. It's one of those things where this kind of officer in general is what we need in the police department. And so he didn't know I was coming today. Actually, he was trying to hide it from me. I have spies. So congratulations, and very well deserved.
On behalf of the Police Commission, I just want to thank the board for taking a moment. I know you have a very busy day today, but take a moment to thank this individual. Sometimes in this time, in this age, it's not about the big policies and the debates that we're all going to have, but it's really about one individual and his family stopping to save the life of another individual. So I would just thank you for taking the time to recognize this very brave officer as well as Tenderloin Station as a whole. Thank you.
Sergeant Kwan, please come up.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Board of Supervisors, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to very quickly say thank you for this opportunity and the recognition that you are giving me. Once again, doing the job that I do, I'm not used to the limelight, the recognition. I generally go out there, I do my job the best way I can and try to make a difference every day. I'm just honored and lucky that I was at the right place at the right time and was able to help somebody out and literally made a life of difference. And for that, I'm grateful. And once again, thank you very much.
Thanks, Sergeant Kwan. Not many of us can say that there is one more life here on earth because of you. So thank you.
Where's your camera?
Sorry.
Okay.
Congratulations. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, President Bree. Colleagues, today I am excited to honor a remarkable organization called Jumpstart, a national organization aimed at ensuring that every child in America enters kindergarten prepared to succeed. Jumpstart was founded in 1993 by university students from Yale, who realized that the positive impact individualized attention in literacy had on children in poverty. The initiative has grown since then nationally by recruiting, training, and supporting college students to work with early childhood programs to provide literacy tutoring for young students. To date, they have trained over 40,000 core members. Through a research-based curriculum, Jumpstart core members work with small groups of children twice weekly during the academic year and foster meaningful relationships allowing for individualized instruction. Jumpstart has impacted over 80,000 children, preparing them for school success. In 1997, Jumpstart launched its effort in San Francisco, working with the most under-resourced neighborhoods, including the Bayview Hunters Point, Visitation Valley, and Mission District communities. In the 2014-15 program year, 91% of the children Jumpstart served in San Francisco were designated as low income. To do this work, Jumpstart engages 120 core members from our very own San Francisco State University. Annually, Jumpstart organizes a unique global campaign called Read for the Record, which generates public support for high-quality early learning. Every year, they try to break the world record for the largest number of people reading the same book on the same day, a record in which they hold. Since 2006, over 14.5 million children and adults have participated in Read for the Record worldwide. This year, October 22nd, marks Read for the Record's 10th anniversary, and they coincidentally selected a charming book. Maybe not so charming, I shouldn't be showing this to the public, but in the political world, it says, "Not Norman." So that's what they're going to be reading. Thank you very much. Locally, Jumpstart partnered with the Read Zone, the joke, Red Zone, Read Zone, a signature initiative of the 50 Fund, the Legacy Fund of the San Francisco Bay Area Super Bowl 50 host committee, focused on investing in, strengthening, and building the capacity of high-quality programs that will improve the reading proficiency of third graders throughout the Bay Area. With a lead contribution from Tux Rush for literacy, the Read Zone has made it possible for 12,000 Bay Area children to take home a copy of Not Norman. Okay, every time they're going to see me, they say, "Not Norman," including 6,000 San Francisco children in preschool and kindergarten. As someone who worked in the world of early care and education, I know firsthand how crucial it is to ensure that low-income children are given the opportunity to advance their literacy and close the achievement gap before it even begins. In order to honor the outstanding work of Jumpstart locally and nationally, I would like to proclaim today's Jumpstart Day in San Francisco. I'm pledging to read Not Norman this Thursday, and I hope that everyone will join the challenge. Now, I'd like to welcome Jumpstart's team to the podium. Naila Bolis, President and CEO from Boston. She's visiting from Boston. Jennifer Karan, who is the Deputy Director, and the region's Vice President, Atalia Sergi. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Supervisor Yee, and thank you to the entire board for this recognition. I am Natalia Sergi, the Regional Vice President for Jumpstart here in California. And I have been with Jumpstart for the past 8 years, really focusing on bringing this program to under-resourced communities and making sure that all children have a high-quality early education experience. We at Jumpstart believe that it should not matter what a child's zip code is or what their parents' income is, that they should all have the right to a high-quality early education experience so that they can have a good start to their education and to their lifelong learning. So we are just so pleased to receive this honor from you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your continued support of Jumpstart and the work that we are doing here in San Francisco and serving the communities of need here. Thank you for supporting Jumpstart's Read for the Record, and make sure you definitely read Not Norman this year.
Thank you, and congratulations again to Jumpstart. Now we will return to our agenda, and Madam Clerk, can we please go to our 3 p.m. special order?
Items 17 through 20 comprise the special order at 3 p.m. For for a public hearing of persons interested in the Public Works decision dated August 24th, 2015, approving a proposed four-lot subdivision located at 40 Bernal Heights Boulevard, and to make the environmental findings under CEQA. Item 18 is the motion to approve the decision of Public Works to approve the tentative map. Item 19 disapproves the department's decision and disapproves the tentative map. And item 20 is a motion directing the preparation of findings.
Thank you. So it's my understanding, Supervisor Campos, that you wanted to ask for a continuance on this particular item. Supervisor Cohen and Campos, you wanted to ask for a continuance on this item, and I just wanted to before you request the continuance, I know that there was a date in November that you wanted to continue this item to. I am only concerned, we have the 5M project and the 75 Howard project, and we're talking about a really long time here at the board on that particular day. And then looking at the calendar, I think that December 1st would probably be a better time because there are no 3 p.m. special orders on that particular day. So I just wanted to make that recommendation.
Thank you.
Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, Madam President. So with that in mind, I'm happy to make a motion to continue this item to December 1st. Was that the preferred date?
Yes.
So December 1st, the meeting of December 1st, 2015.
Okay, Supervisor Campos.
And to continue it open.
Okay.
Did I get that right, City Attorney?
Okay, Supervisor Campos has made a motion to continue this item to December 1st and to continue it open. It's seconded by Supervisor Tang. And at this time, I'd like to open it up to public comment on the continuance only. Are there any members of the public who'd like to make public comment on the continuance of this item? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Okay, and on the continuance to the meeting of December 1st, 2015, open. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener. Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos. Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Okay, the motion to continue to December 1st, 2015 has passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, can we please return to our regular agenda?
Yes, item 15, Madam President.
Thank you.
That is an ordinance to amend the planning code to correct errors, reenact previously existing language that was repealed in error as part of the Article 2 reorganization ordinance, update the code and to make non-substantive language revisions to simplify and clarify text, and affirming the Planning Department CEQA determination and making other required findings.
Colleagues, can we take this item? Same house, same call. Without objection, the ordinance passes unanimously on the first reading. Next item, please.
Item 16 is an ordinance to amend the Administrative Code, Section 5A.36A, to extend the sunset date of the Public Utilities Revenue Bond Oversight Committee for an additional 3 years to January 1st, 2019.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this ordinance passes unanimously on the first reading. Can we now go to our committee reports?
Item 21 was considered by the Government Audit and Oversight Committee at a rescheduled meeting on Thursday, October 15th, and was forwarded as a committee report. Item 21 is a resolution to respond to the presiding judge of the Superior Court on the findings and recommendations contained in the 2014-15 Civil Grand Jury Report entitled Unfinished Business, a continuity report on the 2011-12 report Deja Vu All Over Again, and to urge the mayor to cause the implementation of accepted findings and recommendations through his or her department head and through the development of the annual budget.
Okay, colleagues, can we take this item? Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted Oh, wait, sorry, the house has changed. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On item 21. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener. Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee? Yee absent. Supervisor Avalos? Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos?
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen? Aye. Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen? Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell? Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim?
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr?
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 10 ayes.
The resolution is adopted unanimously. Item 22, please.
Items 22 and 23 were considered by the Land Use and Transportation Committee at a regular meeting on Monday, October 19th, and were forwarded as committee reports. Item 22, ordinance to amend the general plan by revising Map 5 of the urban design element to change the bulk designation shown on the map for 302 Silver Avenue, adopting and making findings regarding the mitigated negative declaration prepared in compliance with CEQA.
Roll call vote.
On item 22, Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener. Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
President Breed, excuse me, was on the roster I took my name off by accident, but I was on the roster to make comments before the vote.
For 22?
And for 22 and 23, yes.
Okay, so I'm going to suspend the vote and call on Supervisor Avalos for item 20. Did you call 22 and 23, Madam Clerk?
I only called 22, Madam President.
Okay, so item number 22, Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you. I thought you called item 23, Madam Clerk?
I had mentioned that items 22 and 23 were considered at the Land Use Committee meeting and forwarded to the board as committee reports, and then only called item 22.
Oh, can I request you call item 23 as well, and then I can talk about them both of the same project?
Okay, Madam Clerk, can you please call item 23 as well?
Item 23, ordinance to amend the planning code and zoning map to create the Jewish Home of San Francisco Special Use District located at 302 Silver Avenue to allow an increase in the height within portions of the Special Use District, adopting findings including environmental findings about the negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting plan, and making the appropriate findings.
Supervisor Avalos.
Thank you, President Breed. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, these two items, a general plan amendment and an ordinance to create the Jewish Home Special Use District, are for a project on the corner of Mission and Silver Avenue, where the Jewish home currently exists. This project is actually the largest project we've had in maybe 15 years in District 11. We haven't had any serious projects like this come forward, and this one is very, very transformative for not just the Jewish home and their facility and their services, but also for the neighborhood as well. This project will allow for the expansion of the residential care facility located at the intersection of Mission and Silver and spanning the entire block that goes to Avalon and Paris as well. Or actually Lisbon as well. The Jewish home has been serving the frail and vulnerable residents for over 144 years. Today we have their President and CEO, Daniel Ruth, in the back of the room, as well as Sheree Koshover and a few other staff as well who have been supportive of the project and managing through this process, Joel Roos and Susan Diamond. The facility has been at its current site for most of all these years, opening in 1891 to 12 residents. Now the facility serves 374 skilled nursing facility residents and patients. It's the largest private nonprofit provider of nursing home care in the state of California. That's how big it is. They are seeking to expand their facilities to serve an additional 248 residents. The expansion will also include a new modeling care called The Square, which will be an open facility to support older adults who want to continue to live at home and who can come to one locale to have all their medical and social needs met. The new uses are in response to the need to help subsidize Medi-Cal residents and reduce dependency on unreliable and shrinking federal and state money and unsustainable levels of philanthropy. The plan is to remove 2 outmoded buildings and to tie the campus together through both landscape and new contemporary buildings. The The project will also add greenery and seating areas along Mission Street, create a new plaza area at Mission and Silver, a plaza that is currently known as Pigeon Plaza. I don't think that's the most fun name, but we're going to see a real incredible landscaped and beautiful site there in the future. The project will also widen sidewalks along Mission Street and add quality outdoor spaces and a new entry at the intersection of Avalon and London Street. The project is really going to make a difference on the vitality of Mission Street. We have not seen any significant infrastructure growth or development on Mission Street probably since the 1950s. So this is a project that we hope to jumpstart bringing our district into the 21st century. Many of these elements were added as a result of great community engagement process to address concerns of neighbors. And I can't speak any more highly of the effort that was made to really connect with the community. It was years in the making, a lot of input that was taken, and design changes made based on that input. So I want to thank the Jewish Home for all that great work. Colleagues, I urge your unanimous support for this great project in District 11. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Avalos. Madam Clerk, on items 22 and 23, can you please call the roll?
Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Weiner. Weiner, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos.
Aye.
Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Those ordinances are passed unanimously on the first reading. Okay, Madam Clerk, can we go to roll call for introductions?
Yes, Madam President. The first supervisor up to introduce new business, Supervisor Weiner.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, today I'm introducing legislation to reform and strengthen our code enforcement process and to make our buildings in San Francisco safer, crack down on code violators, and to create a revolving loan fund to help small property owners to correct code violations when they struggle financially to do so. Code violations affect our neighborhoods and residents all over the city. We've all seen buildings with boarded up windows, with broken stairs, with major incomplete construction work, with obvious signs of extreme hoarding, or even entire portions of buildings missing. We also have too many apartment buildings in San Francisco where there are significant life safety code violations that threaten the residents of those buildings. These extreme and obvious violations can sometimes last for years. We all want safe buildings, and this is important for our neighborhoods, for tenants, for owners, for anyone who is either living in an unsafe building or near an unsafe or blighted buildings. Unfortunately, at times these violations are not being expeditiously and effectively addressed. Too often code violation inspections occur. The violation is reported, the city is aware of the problem, but little or no action is taken by city departments despite repeated complaints and obvious violations. For example, in my district, we first came across this problem on a particular street on Grandview where it was reported to us that an extreme hoarding situation existed where the resident was unsafe in the building and a tinderbox existed for the neighborhood if, God forbid, there were even a small fire. We learned that various code inspections had occurred, that there were clear violations, and nothing was being done. Ultimately, we were able to get Department of Building Inspections to take action, and we found alternative housing for the resident, and the problem was abated. But over and over again, we have seen situations where clear and dangerous code violations exist, and action is either not taken or it takes so long for the action to occur that it is just unacceptable. One challenge is that our complicated code inspection system lacks sufficient coordination and communication among the different departments, which can leave gaps in accountability and follow-through. In addition, there are some departments that appear to be reluctant to pursue enforcement, whether it's due to budgetary concerns or any other number of articulated reasons. It's also very difficult to track what is going on in terms of buildings and their problems and the complaints against them. The system is not working for our neighborhoods and for our residents. Along with Supervisor Cohen, we held a hearing last year where various departments, building inspection, housing, health, fire, and planning all came to us and reported on what their code enforcement procedures are and where we might be able to improve things. After that hearing, we began to work on this legislation. The legislation does the following. It grants the city attorney's office the authority to pursue code violations in court without referral from a city department. Currently, the city attorney cannot take action on code violations unless the department has referred the item. And so this legislation will empower the city attorney to take action even if a referral hasn't occurred. We've seen too many situations where the city attorney knows about a problem but can't do anything about it, or the referral happens so many years after the violation that the evidence is stale, and at times courts have thrown out the cases by asking, if this is such a serious violation, why didn't you do anything about it beforehand? The legislation will also give the Department of Building Inspection the clear and explicit authority to suspend all open permits on a project where there is a history of repeated violations of our various codes. Currently, if a project has multiple permits and there's a serious violation relating to one permit, DBI can only suspend that permit and cannot suspend the other permits. So work will continue on the project even though there are egregious violations. This will allow DBI to suspend all of the permits. The legislation will also create a unified code enforcement process for building, fire, and our public health departments. Currently, these codes all have different enforcement processes, including how the departments conduct investigations, how they issue notices of violation, how they hold administrative hearings, and how they assess penalties. The legislation will unify the process so that these departments will be consistent in how they approach code violations. The legislation will create more accountability by establishing a monthly reporting requirement for departments on notices of violation that are issued. And finally, the legislation creates a code enforcement revolving loan fund to provide low-interest loans to qualified property owners to bring buildings up to code. We know of situations where buildings are in violation of the code, but the property owners simply don't have the resources to do what they want to do, and that is to correct the violations. We allocated into a reserve $4 million in the last budget process to go into this fund. We'll have to do a supplemental appropriation to actually allocate it, but this will create the structure for that revolving loan fund. I want to thank members of the community and departments who have worked with us, and particularly Building Inspection Commissioner Deborah Walker, who's worked closely with our office on these code enforcement pieces of legislation and on the revolving loan fund. Colleagues, I look forward to the discussion to moving this forward. And then finally, I have a very sad in memoriam for Marjorie G. Jang, a resident of District 8, who passed away at St. Luke's Hospital on October 9th at the age of 61. Known as Margie by her friends, she was born in Los Angeles in 1953, graduating from Wilson High School in 1970, and earning a bachelor's degree in nursing at Cal State Los Angeles. She later earned a master's degree in nursing as a nurse practitioner at Samuel Merritt College in Oakland. Margie had a 40-year career in nursing in many diverse areas, including psychology, med-surg, public health, hospice, home care, internal medicine, HIV, geriatrics, pharmacology, liver transplant, and hepatology. Pretty much, I think, almost the whole body. Margie loved the arts and at various times had season tickets to the Symphony, the Berkeley Rep, and the Aurora Theater. She loved gardening, and she was a charter member of a really wonderful community garden in District 8 in Diamond Heights called the Red Hen Community Garden, which the community came together and worked with the police academy to start that community garden on some spare land. She was also an active member of the First United Lutheran Church. She was a prolific reader, a movie buff, and loved spending time with family, and she was a loving mom to her dog Buster. She's lovingly remembered by her husband, Steve Johnson, her sister Lillian, and her brothers, Stephen, Alan, Jean, and Richard. And I know that we will miss her dearly, and we send her family our sincerest condolences. And the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Wiener. Supervisor Yee.
Submit.
Supervisor Avalos. Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I have a couple of items. The first is introducing a resolution supporting the permanent protection of the Mojave Trails, Sand to Snow, and Castle Mountains National Monuments here in the California desert. This resolution asks President Obama to designate these monuments promptly through presidential proclamation via the Antiquities Act. The California desert contains spectacular public lands that are scenic, environmental, economic, cultural, and recreational resources across our state. Securing permanent protection for Mojave Trails, for Sand to Snow, and Castle Mountains will secure quality of life and recreational opportunities directly related to our public lands, and will complete the desert protection measures that have been initiated by Senator Dianne Feinstein, who has been working on this for more than 2 decades. We want to thank Senator Feinstein and the Sierra Club for championing this very important issue. The last item that I have is, we're talking about immigration, and the fact is that this is an issue that impacts people from across the globe. And today I'm proud, though sad, to feel the need to do this, to introduce a resolution denouncing the Dominican Republic for its illegal and racist treatment of Dominicans of Haitian descent, simply because of the color of their skin. The Constitutional Court of the Dominican Republic issued a ruling on September 23rd of 2013, which essentially retroactively strips the citizenship of Dominicans born after 1929 to any parent who is not of Dominican ancestry. Recently, the government announced its intention to conduct a mass deportation of more than 200,000 people who were born in the Dominican Republic but were actually of Haitian ancestry. Most of these individuals are individuals that have never been to Haiti, even though their families happen to have that ancestry, individuals who only know the Dominican Republic as their home. The government is engaged in a number of illegal and immoral practices against its own citizens. It is important when we see this injustice that San Francisco join many cities, states, and countries around the world in condemning the government of the Dominican Republic and its reprehensible conduct. The Bay Area has a special relationship to this struggle in the Dominican Republic. For more than 17 years, Berkeley Laws International Human Rights Law Clinic has challenged the Dominican Republic's refusal to recognize the citizenship of children of Haitian descent who are born on Dominican soil. In response to the Dominican Republic's most recent actions, this clinic, and we're grateful to them for the work, their clinic's alumni have continued their efforts and are leading an advocacy campaign to challenge these human rights violations. I know that we will be hearing from some of the students and the clinic director during public comment, but I hope, colleagues, that you will join me in supporting this resolution, that we can pass it unanimously and consistent with the passage of our unanimous decision today not to participate in PEP. I think that it's important for us to send this message today. I want to thank Hillary Ronan in my office for her work on this item. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Campos. Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Farrell. Supervisor Kim.
I have one item to submit today. Today it's my privilege to introduce a resolution to urge our U.S. Congress to award the Congressional Gold Medal to our Filipino veterans of World War II. From 1941 to 1946, the men and women of the Philippines and United States performed an invaluable service in defense of both countries by being an integral part of the U.S. Armed Forces Far East, serving with great distinction and courage to help liberate the Philippines on October 20th, 1944, exactly 71 years ago. Out of the estimated 300,000 loyal and courageous Filipino veterans who served and fought, More than 50,000 made the ultimate sacrifice and gave their lives in service to their country and to the ideal of freedom and liberty. It is the very least that we can do as a country to recognize their valor, sacrifice, and service by awarding these veterans and their survivors the Congressional Gold Medal. I want to thank my co-sponsors, Supervisor John Avalos, Eric Marr, David Campos, for your co-sponsorship, and the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Marr.
Thank you, colleagues. I have a couple of items. This coming Saturday at the Richmond Senior Center from 1 to 3, I'll be hosting what I call our fourth event. We call them a Tenants' Rights Town Hall. I call it the Our Richmond No Evictions gathering. This meeting is a follow-up to our September Tenants' Town Hall, which drew over 100 attendees, many of them people facing evictions and displacement from the Richmond district. At that gathering, we began strategizing and dialoguing on how to support the hundreds of people that are facing potential evictions and displacement or fear of it. The tenant rights organizations that have been working with my office include the Housing Rights Committee and ACE, formerly ACORN, Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment. They'll be there to provide information on what tenants who are facing evictions can do. Also, Tenants Together and others have been a key part of it, and reps from the tenants union as well. This Our Richmond No Evictions Town Hall is targeted to seniors because they are facing severe efforts on whole buildings being flipped right now, and many seniors facing evictions in our neighborhood. They've been especially hard hit by rising rents and no-fault evictions, including owner-move-in evictions. The Richmond has seen no-fault evictions increased from 60% from 2012 or 13, and we hope to build my office hopes to build on the success of our previous gatherings to share information and build community solidarity. For more information, please contact my aide, Nick Pagalatos, in my office, 554-7412. Also, as we reach the end of October, for those of us with families or also just anyone that loves Halloween, there's an end coming up to a 13-year tradition. I think it's the scariest haunted house I've ever been in, and it takes place in the Richmond district on 6001 California Street at the market, the former Apple Dietrich Market. It's usually transformed the basement into a creepy haunted house. It's located on 22nd Avenue in California, right by Angelina's Deli, but it's the evening of Halloween, October 31st, Saturday from 6 to 9. The main and unique feature of this haunted house is that you go down a slide and you descend into the depths of something so creepy that you won't believe it. It's a free admission event. It's really targeted at the Richmond district, but those folks who want to come from other neighborhoods, please take public transit or bike or walk. This year's theme is The End, as symbolically, yet unfortunately this is the last year of the 13-year tradition, so don't miss out. The founders, I wanted to give a shout out to Alex Darr and his brother Brian Darr, who grew up in the Richmond district. They started this haunted house in 2002 as a gift to the community. It's been going on every year at the same location. They started it at their house, and then they moved it to the basement of the grocery store on California and 22nd in 2008. And they started small, but they were inspired by their experience of Halloween growing up in the Richmond district. And when they started it, only a few homes gave out candy on their block. But over time, it's been a great event where people gather, hang out, really celebrate Halloween in the way that it should be celebrated. And by the third or fourth year that they started doing it on California and 22nd, every house on the block was participating. And last year there were about 4 different Halloween parties and hundreds of people coming out to the haunted house. Alex also, this is important to mention, that he met his future wife, Kirsten, of Paul's Hat Works at the haunted house in 2006, and they married 6 years later at 2012 when they shut down the block. And I had the honor of officiating or being at their wedding right before the festivities as well. So to District 1 residents and others that want to join us, please come out on California and 22nd. I also wanted to say, too, that there are a number of other events, from the Saturday carnivals, Halloween carnivals at Zion Lutheran Church on 9th and Geary from 11 to 4 this coming Saturday, to Lafayette Elementary School, 12 to 4, Anza and 36th Avenue, to events at the Richmond District Neighborhood Center, the Halloween Fest coming up this Sunday from 12 to 3. Also, the YMCA's annual House of Halloween on next Friday on the 30th from 5:30 to 8. That one's a $10 admissions charge. The Supernatural California Academy of Sciences that I think Supervisor Farrell may be there in costume on Friday the 30th from 6:30 to 9. That one's more expensive at $35 per kid and $50 per adult, but it goes to a good cause. And lastly, the Outer Balboa merchants and others really celebrating Fright Fest, and thanks to Marjan Philauer for organizing this one on Halloween day from noon to 5:30 on Balboa, all the way from 35th Avenue to 39th, from Simple Pleasures Cafe and Coffee House all the way to the Balboa Theater. So please come out and join us for all those great events. Lastly, colleagues, I'd like to ask us to close the meeting in honor of an amazing woman. She was 104 years old when she passed away. She's a longtime Richmond District resident for over 50 years. She raised 10 children. Her name was Dora Yuet Young Wong, a longtime District 1 resident. She passed away on October 1st peacefully in her sleep at the age of 104 at CPMC Hospital, surrounded by her loving family. She lived a long and adventurous, happy, passionate life. She'll be missed by her family and friends. Like my father, Ms. Wong was born in Toisan, Guangdong, China, and in 1926 she married her late husband, Sidney Wong. In 1932, Mrs. Wong enrolled in medical school to pursue a career in obstetrics while raising 6 small children at the time. She loved to drive her Austin 7 automobile in China. In 1941, Sidney, her husband, returned to the U.S. to maintain his U.S. citizenship, and Mrs. Wong and the kids joined him in San Francisco in 1947. They opened a family grocery store, and in 1950, Sidney began his career as a salesman for American Poultry. After that, Dora and Sidney had 4 more children for a total of 10, and in 1972, Mrs. Wong was elected chairperson of the Women's Auxiliary of the Wong Family Association, and in 1988, she was honored as the Mother of the Year by the Chinese Women's Association of America. She was highly respected in our community and the Chinese community. She was also a life member of the Ladies Auxiliary to the Veterans of Foreign Wars. Mrs. Wong loved to play mahjong like I do and occasionally visited the casinos also like I do. Dora was wise, admired, kind, gentle, devoted, generous, and respected by her community. She inspired people to be outstanding. Dora was beautiful and a blessed person. She's survived by her children Betty and her husband Henry Ng, Jenny Lee, Marilyn and her husband Henry Chu, Raymond and his wife Dara, Mabel, Edmund and his wife Eva, and Sherman. She's also survived by her brother Calvin and niece Wai Ling and nephews Bing An, Bing Hung, and Bing Q, along with 14 grandchildren and 22 great-grandchildren and 1 great-grandson. Dora was predeceased by Sidney in 1977, Edna and Dewey, Gordon, Patty, Andrew Lee, Deborah Wu Wong, and Vanessa Ng. A special thank you to Dr. Tuan Hua, Dr. Bruce McCormick, and caregivers Ling and Aleng. The memorial service for Mrs. Wong took place last weekend in Chinatown. In lieu of flowers, donations can be made to the Wong Family Benevolent Association, Chinese Hospital of San Francisco, or your favorite charity. Thank you. The rest I'll submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Marr. Madam President, that concludes the introduction of new business.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, can you please read public comment?
At this time, the public may directly address the entire Board of Supervisors for up to 2 minutes on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Board, to include the minutes and items on the adoption without reference to committee calendar, items 26 and 27. Public comment is not allowed on items 1 through 23. These items have previously been subject to public comment at a Board committee. Pursuant to the Board's rules, direct your remarks to the Board as a whole, not to individual supervisors, and not to the audience, please. Speakers using interpretation assistance will be allowed twice the amount of time to testify. If you would like to display your document on the overhead projector, please clearly state such to SFG TV and then remove the document when you would like the screen to return to live coverage of the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. First speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Freddy Volvito from the Coalition for Latino Voters, and I'm a political scientist. I would like to talk to you about what's happening really in the community, in the Latino community. We are being victimized since the incident of Kate Stanley happened in the Pierce not too long ago. We are being demonized, and this is your fault, you all supervisors. We have 11 districts in this area. None of you came to our defense. None of you incriminate or say anything against. If you discriminate against any race or Latino community, you're going to persecute. None of you did this kind of stuff. Now, we, the Latino community, are suffering. Not too long ago, last week on Thursday, Herbert Benitez was assassinated, killed by law enforcement. None of you know the name of that guy because none of you except that one of the supervisors came visit yesterday, and no media coverage at all. No media coverage at all. Who are we? Are we animals to you guys? You know, now according to census, we are the majority. As a Latino voters nowadays, we're gonna flex our power and we're gonna 86 you. If you don't know what's 86 in the terms of clothing, now millennials will be using 86 to be able to kick, people who are behaving bad on bars or any kind of stuff, out of the street because they are not functioning. So our coalition is going to be 86. Please consider our petition and try to pass a resolution in which they can protect our Latino community, and also they can be able to 86, any law enforcement who kill another human, doesn't matter, has to be Latino or any other color, just to be 86 out of the law enforcement, because we are suffering. We are suffering. The Latino community is suffering by neighbors, and I already gave you this paper, and please read it a little bit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good day.
Next speaker, please.
Thank you, President Breed and other members of the cabal. My name is Christopher Dahl, and I live at 6th and Howard, 10 blocks and less than 14 meters from sea level. Currently, I rise to comment on the oxygen cycle. I've previously spoken of the carbon cycle, of the process which moves carbon around our planet. Carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is taken in by green plants. The plants intercept the right frequency of light, green, and use this energy to combine molecules of carbon dioxide into long carbon chains called carbohydrates. Animals then eat those carbohydrates and release some of that energy to fuel their own survival. The plant process releases oxygen and the animal process consumes it. From the animal point of view, it's just as relevant to call the thing the oxygen cycle rather than just the carbon cycle, but each is part of the life cycle. After all, oxygen is the most vital of elements. Both the lack of it and an excess of it will kill you. The U.S. Air Force, as part of the space program, has repeatedly demonstrated the straight-line relationship between loss of oxygen and loss of mental faculties. The less oxygen you breathe, the more stupid you get. And remember, burning stuff up consumes oxygen too. I do apologize for any stress that I felt recently and that I felt I had to share to your possible distress as I applied the theory of oxygen loss directly to Congress Twit Blackburn. But the subject of climate change is too critical to be shy about any part of it. The deniers like Congress Twit Blackburn will be killers if we do not take care right now. Remember, using free energy to make fresh water to grow new trees will achieve world carbon balance. Thank you, President Breed.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
My name is Mike Brown, and I've been advocating for the people ever since I can remember. What's going on, I understand what's going on. Everybody want to get paid, okay? And this is the American way. It's a capitalistic society. But can't y'all leave something on the table for the people? I don't understand that. Leave something. Man, you had the Lennar got that land for $1, and y'all was supposed to work a deal out with a group out there to buy some land for $8 million. Y'all making it $15 million, holding, sitting on your hand, ain't saying nothing about that injustice. Okay, them brothers can't develop out there. Then you got Radco come in. Yeah, they've been paying everybody rents and all that. That's cool. But you just usurp the people. You ain't find an organization other than somewhere in the mission economic development, a bridge, and all them people already entrenched. You know what I'm saying? Come on, man. Get out of the box thinking. Y'all can get y'all, but let somebody else get some too. Okay? And then we're here at the LBE trying to get certified, and these people doing everything they can to not include diversity, contributing to the out-migration of our people as well as the income gap. And what y'all doing? Well, hey, y'all ain't got no economic community to back us. We going where the money at. I get that, okay? But that stuff is playing out. Because if this economy start falling and Walmart start bailing out, although they got billions and billions, everybody going to start jumping out then. And you can't come back. Because we already know the blood is on your hand. Man, put something on the table. You got Aunt B place out there. Let some African Americans develop that and put a park and some high rise with some revenue. We tired of just the play thing. We need some revenue. That was the whole problem with the hill. Y'all
Thank
put
you
the
very
houses.
much.
No. You put the.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
And Madam President, before the next speaker speaks, I'll just remind the public that there are no signs to be held in the chamber, please, and no vocal expression in support or in opposition. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Next speaker, please.
Anyway, Madam President, members of the board, my name is Vicki Hoover. I am an outings leader and a public lands advocate for the Sierra Club. And I would like to thank Supervisor Campos for introducing a resolution urging 3 new national monuments in the California desert. I have led many trips to the California desert over the years. It's kind of far away from where we are here in the city, but it's a wonderful example of the geographic variety, extraordinary diversity that enriches our lives as Californians. And 21 years ago, we cheered when Senator Feinstein's big desert bill passed and established new national parks and many new wilderness areas in the desert. But, you know, those were all very separate areas. And we've learned over the last 21 years, what with climate change, that you need to connect protected areas. The request of Senator Feinstein to the President to designate 3 new national monuments in the desert, those monuments would connect present protected areas and provide valuable additional protection that we really need now. So I urge you to adopt Supervisor Campos's resolution, which will really show the President that he has the kind of public support he needs to make this declaration. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, President Breed and Board of Supervisors. My name is Iris Marians, and I'm also a public servant for another municipality. However, I was born and raised in San Francisco. My father practices medicine here and has an office here, and so does my stepmother. My issue is about senior services and who's falling between the cracks while we expend dollars on services that do not address the need. My aunt is 99 years old, and she's lived in her building since 1965. I have tried unsuccessfully to talk to members of the Board of Supervisors, and just a meeting out of courtesy has not happened. My aunt has been harassed to the point of a stroke. My car stopped in mid-motion by other occupants of a TIC building interested in what they can gain financially at my aunt's removal from that apartment. This is abomination and shameful. Adult Protective Services has done nothing. Legal Services for the Elderly has done nothing. Tenderloin Housing Clinic says that we've denied their services. I am sure that you are not aware that some seniors cannot care for themselves, but the property prospects that are going on in the city are in fact killing some of your residents. She has suffered health impacts that are irreversible, and I cannot get a meeting. The trickle-down climate of the politics are even within your police department. When the police came to the building at my request, they met with the other tenants and had us wait outside after my aunt's locks were changed on her. Again, she's 99 years old. What services does she have in this city? Who can help her? They are suing her. She's now in a legal battle that she can't possibly afford to fight. So now it's a judicial process that evicts people, no longer Ellis.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
America is fascist country, evict 85 years Holocaust survivor on the street to die. God punish this city with Mayor Lee and Board of Supervisors.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
You have anything else to say? Okay, next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Malaika Costello-Doherty, and I am here to talk about why city tenants can't use the word harassed. This might follow on what the woman was talking about earlier. I was born and raised in San Francisco, and for the past 11 years, I've been living in a funky building on Chattanooga Street in Noe Valley. I've had job changes, a lot of things have gone on, but the one thing that stayed the same is that rent-controlled apartment. In 2013, the apartment changed hands, and an old landlord had passed away, and Russell Flynn's company took over. You may have seen him recently featured in the East Bay Express article about Oakland tenants who are being targeted out of rent control. Ever since then, I've called the Department of Public Health, the Department of Building Inspections. I was on the phone this morning with the fire department, and that's just to ensure that we have fire safety. This is, from my understanding, this series of raids and this feeling of just being not wanted in your own housing is what's known as harassment. However, you can't say it. Advocates, lawyers, everyone has told me that you can't do it because it's too common, and it's also too hard to prove. And there are very few legal remedies available. And when I found out is that it's been this sort of balancing act that I've been having to share what I consider very personal and medical information just to get secure housing. So I think you need tenant harassment in Eviction 3.0. There needs to be something that allows tenants to say, stop bothering me. Right now there's not, and it's really a plight on the city.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Roxana Althos. I'm an assistant clinical professor and an associate director of the International Human Rights Law Clinic at UC California, Berkeley. Thank you so much for David Campos for sponsoring the resolution on very important litigation, a very landmark decision we won 10 years ago on the rights of children of Haitian ancestry born in the Dominican Republic. Hundreds of thousands of Haitians and their progeny live in the Dominican Republic. The DR shares the island of Hispaniola with Haiti and brought many Haitians beginning in the 20th century over the border to work in the sugar industry, and has continued to entice workers to work in tourism and service industry. And many of these people had their children and raised their families in the Dominican Republic. Under the Dominican Constitution, anyone born in the DR has the right to Dominican nationality. In practice, what we documented and proved in our case, that is true unless you're of Haitian ancestry, unless you're poor, unless you're black, and if you have a foreign-sounding last name. We won a landmark decision that ordered the Dominican Republic to recognize the rights of all children, regardless of their social origin, their ancestry, their right to Dominican nationality. That decision, the Dominican Republic has failed to implement that decision, and as a result, has stripped hundreds of thousands of people of their right to nationality. A lot of these people have now self-deported because they are so terrified of the nighttime raids that Dominican police conduct in their neighborhoods that separate families, separate children from their parents, husbands from their wives, and are living in abject.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I'm here in support of the resolution by Supervisor Campos that denounces Dominican Republic's xenophobic laws and policies against Dominicans of Haitian descent. As a law student in Berkeley's International Human Rights Law Clinic, I helped litigate the case John and Bosico versus Dominican Republic before the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. In preparing for trial, I lived in the Dominican Republic and observed firsthand the devastating effects of the Dominican government's systematic exclusion of Dominicans of Haitian descent. Even though the Inter-American Court's ruling condemned these human rights violations, the Dominican government intentionally defied the court's order by escalating its attack on this vulnerable population. The Dominican government has now rendered stateless hundreds of thousands of Dominicans of Haitian descent. These are children who were born in the Dominican Republic, but whose government has stripped them of their citizenship in violation of international and Dominican law. They have been condemned to a life without hope. Without a birth certificate, they cannot register for school or obtain gainful employment, and they're at constant risk of being deported to Haiti, a foreign country, one that is utterly unknown to them. To quiet critics, the Dominican government offered to naturalize some Dominicans and temporarily regularize their status of others. Yet true to form, the application process set up by the Dominican government was fraught with pitfalls. It was insufficiently funded, and the application requirements were excessively burdensome, onerous, and costly. As a result, relatively few have had their citizenship restored. And notably, the Dominican government categorically rejected the applications of all Dominicans activists who have valiantly fought for years on behalf of Haitian immigrants and Dominicans of Haitian descent. It retaliated against them by denying them any possibility of having their citizenship restored. The Dominican Republic has resumed deportations. These deportations lack any illusion of due process. They are conducted by rounding up anyone Dominican officials believe are Haitian. Those who have darker complexion or a French-sounding surname are the most at risk. Without any meaningful opportunity to prove their right to stay in the country or even gather their belongings or notify their families, they're expelled to a country where they likely do not speak the language, where they likely do not have any connections or ties. I urge you to join the growing tide of outrage against the Dominican Republic. Other local and state governments and politicians, both here and abroad, have raised their voices to amend the Dominican government. And with this resolution, we hope to urge President Obama and the State Department to pressure the Dominican Republic to halt its human rights violations.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name is Cordelia Ukeni, and I'm an alum of the International Human Rights Law Clinic at Berkeley, and I also spent the past year at Stanford Law School researching international human rights. So I want to talk about the implications of the Dominican Republic's action. The Dominican Republic has rendered stateless many citizens of Haitian descent simply because of their color and of their basically being in transit when their parents came to the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic denies papers and ID cards to Dominicans of Haitian descent on the basis of their Creole surnames and skin complexion. Such practices, if left unsanctioned, would signal to other nations that it is acceptable to commit similar violations of the right of citizenship and nationality. As many of you are aware, some areas of states, such as Texas, actively deny birth certificates to the children of undocumented immigrants who are born on U.S. soil. As such, many children are unable to prove citizenship and are denied basic rights such as social services like health care and education. The practice resonates with the Dominican Republic's laws, and a U.S. District Court has recently ruled that immigrants may not present alternative forms of documentation, such as a certificate from their Mexican consulate. Some candidates for federal office support laws depriving U.S.-born citizens of citizenship, and this is exactly the same practice that occurs in the Dominican Republic, and San Francisco should reject it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. My name is Ioana Chukleva, and I'm also an alum of the International Human Rights Clinic at Berkeley Law. I'm also here to ask for your support for the resolution condemning the actions of the Dominican Republic. I just want to add something that hasn't been said so far, and that is that we're in the midst of a global refugee crisis. There are currently more refugees and IDPs than any time since World War II. I think the number is staying at about 60 million around the world. I just got back from the Balkans, where there are millions of people who are fleeing wars in Syria and Afghanistan and Iraq. The European Union is struggling to figure out what to do with them. The world simply does not need more refugees. Unlike Syrians who are forced to flee because of war, Dominicans of Haitian descent do not have to be forced to leave. They can stay at home. They can stay where they grew up and where they've lived most of their lives and where they've worked. Unlike the complicated situation in the Middle East, here there is a relatively simple solution. There's only one actor that has to be influenced, and that's the government of the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic should be forced and required to comply with international law and to fulfill its obligations under the decisions of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. Right here, right now, we can do something to prevent hundreds of thousands of people from being deported. I urge that you adopt this resolution and that you take a stand for justice and freedom. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Pastor Yul Dorn, and I'm really not a stranger to the Board of Supervisors. I was here a while back when I was facing foreclosure, and I was here with ACE about the California CARES program, and it was basically reduced to a study, and I haven't heard anything else. But since that time, things have progressed, and if something doesn't happen, I'm going to be evicted from my property. My property has been foreclosed, and I'm not even getting the benefit of a jury trial. I did find the money to hire a lawyer to have an appeal, but I understand that they're very rarely upheld. So I've spent my time trying to give people hope in San Francisco, spent many years as a crisis responder, helping people who fell victim to homicides. Aubrey Abracaza was one of my first clients that we tried to help his family. My whole life has been built around trying to help people, and yet I'm being pushed out, and there's no reason for that to happen. I've been working the whole time, and the banks didn't give me a chance to even resolve this issue. And I just think it's a miscarriage of justice for everybody to just sit around and let me lose my home of 20 years. I don't understand why that's happening, and I pray that something can be done so my family doesn't have the indignity of being evicted from our home of 20 years.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I stand here before you as a resident of San Francisco, specifically the Bayview. San Francisco is being gentrified. Longtime black and brown communities, working families being pushed out and priced out by developers, realtors, and industries that don't serve our community. In addition, City Hall refuses to pass or support policy and legislation that pushes programs that will keep us here. Instead, our mayor, unfortunately, is catering to the very entities that are pushing us out. I stand here and hear you guys trying to make a sound decision on what's going on in the Dominican Republic. It's time that you guys make relevant decision on what's going on right here in San Francisco. We have demands. We have solutions to our concerns. For instance, you guys new housing is being developed for the public housing residents, then the public residents should get a new start. We're asking for a clean slate in regards to back rent. We're asking for a neighborhood preference program. We want 100% neighborhood preference, meaning the people who reside in our communities can benefit from any new housing being developed. We want you guys to stop the off-site, allowing the developers to build off-site and pay the in lieu fees to allow this to happen. We need affordable housing being built. And the only way for that to happen is for the developers to build with the development that they are building. Otherwise, it never happens. We also want you guys to work with us and try to bring the banks to the table. As Pastor Doran just spoke, he unfortunately is in process of being evicted. Okay, I'm sure you guys are aware that predatory lending is wreaking havoc in our community. That's illegal. But basically what they're doing is preying on the fact that our community has been starved and most of the residents are desperate for money. So they offer us these illegal or unfair loans. We're asking you guys as supervisors of our city, Malia Cohen and London Breed,
yes,
can you please intervene? Thank you.
Madam President, I will just remind the members and the public that there is no vocal expression in support or in opposition. You're welcome to use silent fingers, though.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Carolyn Gage. I'm a resident of Bayview, and I'm also a Bayview ACE chapter member. We have an unfinished agenda in Bayview that needs to be finished. Bayview has been ripped of monies that were allocated to the community. No way is Bayview going to support a poor community. They have been raped and funds have been frauded. Those funds need to be brought back to the community, not with an NSF check, non-sufficient funds, but with the monies. Because we are a working community, two-parent community. Everyone isn't low income or under poverty level income as it's meant to believe. But we do have a finished agenda, and I am of a change agent, and we're going to change this. Take care of your front yard. I realize that internationally people do need help, but here, home first, and then you help other people on the outside. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
I am also a resident of San Francisco. I was born and raised here. We need to do something. The government is supposed to be for the people. How can we see homeless children and children being exposed to shelters where there's molestation, there's theft, you know? So it's time for the government and you all to be accountable for the people, the working class people, to extend some affordable housing for us. I mean, you know, it's like we can't afford to live here anymore. And how can we be okay with homelessness? We see a large percentage of homeless population here in San Francisco. How can we be okay with that? And children and families. And you're for the people? And so I would say maybe if Ed Lee would spend 6 months in a shelter, then he could be more empathetic about the working class and lower class people here that don't have homes. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
I'm Richard Dixon with CT Pharmaceutical, an African-American pharmaceutical company, and it happens to be located in District 10 in Malia Cohen's district. I think Mike Brown forgot to mention that we had called for an appointment. We have several issues with the city. It's commendable that we are up here on a day when you're supporting the Dominican Republic's problems, and we support that too. But I agree with the lady that spoke before. Let's take care of home. We're requesting a meeting specifically for some issues with Malia Cohen. We have an office at 1101 Gilman in her district, And I think Mike Brown made a call to the office. We haven't heard back from her. I'd appreciate a call so that we can have a meeting to attend to some of the specific issues. Housing is a definite problem, but the problem is that you're not spreading any money for jobs and contracts and businesses from the city of San Francisco. When you don't have money, you can't afford housing. You don't have a job, you can't afford housing. If you don't have a contract, you can't afford housing. The African American population has gone from, I heard 16% to down to 3 or 4%. But those 3 or 4% are still paying taxes. I'd appreciate the Board of Supervisors to address this problem. It's dire, it's scary, and it's sad for San Francisco to lose the element and culture of the African Americans that helped build the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Raima Calloway, and I've been in front of this board several times. But I've been living in San Francisco for my whole life, 25 years. And I'm from Lakeview, Ingleside District. In duration of my life, I've been always told that if I was to go to school and obtain a college degree, that I would be able to come back to San Francisco and own a house in the city that I grew up in. But that was a lie. There's a crisis in this city where black and brown folks are being targeted. Earlier in the comments, a young man talked about being a Holocaust survivor. San Francisco was in the midst of the Black Holocaust, where black folks are disproportionately impacted by environmental racism, transit racism, and now we are without housing. And if we have housing, it's not adequate. It is a crime and completely disgusting that the black population only represents 3%. It is wrong that there are supervisors who are being paid to service the people but remain mute on this issue. It is disgusting that black folks only represent a small portion of the population, but we have the highest population in jail. Those of you who remain silent on this issue ought to be ashamed of yourself, that you are being paid off the demise of people who built this city. We need affordable housing. We need low-income housing. We need to stop the displacement of black folks, because once we leave here, it's nowhere. We can't go anywhere. And we built this city. My family's blood is in the street, and you ought to be ashamed to sit up here and look in everybody's face that's been up here telling you their stories, and then you know that we don't have houses. While you guys all go home to your nice houses and your nice cities and nice communities, you need to remember the people in Bayview, Lakeview, Fillmore that are still here fighting and surviving. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Menelik. I'm a lifetime resident of San Francisco, Bayview, Hunters Point. I've been before this body many times, and I've always brought before me documentation, so I wouldn't be speaking of myself. I'm speaking of what you, as legislators, supporters of the law, and body of members of the bureaucracy in this city are supposed to uphold for the people. Article 5, further declaration of the state. Declaration of policy regarding decent housing and genuine employment opportunity. Section 33070. The legislature finds and declares that decent housing and genuine employment opportunity for all the people of this state are vital to the state's future peace and prosperity for all of the following reasons. A, hazardous, congested, and unsanitary housing debilitates occupants' health to the point of impairing motivation and achievement. B, lack of employment opportunity creates despair and frustration, which may precipitate violence. C, unfit housing and lack of employment opportunity depend on each other to perpetuate a system of dependency and hopelessness, which drains the state of its valuable financial and human resources. 33071. Fundamental purpose of redevelopment. There's no more redevelopment agency. They were shot to the curb. Now the Office of Investment Infrastructure has taken over the administrative responsibility of the former redevelopment agency, and the Mayor's Office of Housing to administrate the housing of the due responsibilities and obligations of the former redevelopment agency. The legislator further finds and declares that a fundamental purpose of redevelopment is to expand the supply of low and moderate income housing, to expand employment opportunities for joblessness, underemployed, and low income persons, and to provide an environment for the socioeconomic and psychological growth and well-being of all citizens. None of these sections of the law that I just declared to you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
All I want to say is that, all I want to say is that a lady, she promised me that she will give me my park since in 2012 to 2015, and I really want it. And I want you guys to help us, end gentrification, and how can you guys kick us out of the home because a color of green? That makes no sense. And I'm a kid, and even I'm saying that. So, yeah, that's all I want to say.
Thank you.
He speaks for me.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Trying to get my stuff. A picture of my son ready. Sorry. Hi, my name is Paulette Brown, and I'm here concerning my son, Aubrey Abracasa. I'd like to use the overhead. That's my son, Aubrey Abracasa, who was murdered August 14, 2006. It's been 9 years since my son was murdered, and still today, no closure, no justice for his case. His case is a cold case, and I'm trying to keep his memory alive so that maybe one day I will get justice for my son. Like I always say, I don't always say, I have former Mayor Gavin Newsom saying, I know who killed her son. The DA know who killed her son. The police know who killed her son. Since that day, since he said that, that was a slap in the face to me. No one has come forth. You said it, but then after that, nothing else was said. So I'm walking around with a newsletter repeating what he said. I'm showing people what I have left of my son. This is what I have to walk around with every day to keep my son's memory alive. This is painful for me. I cry every day. I die every day. I sit outside in front of City Hall to watch people say, get over it. Get over it. I'm tired of people telling me to get over it. I will never get over my son's death. My son died a hero. My son died saving someone else's life. How long as a mother am I to grieve? What about all of us mothers? I just don't fight for my son. I fight for other mothers and fathers out there that mothers just at home self-medicating and scared to come out. I tell mothers, you don't want to be. You don't want this to happen. You don't want to stand over your children's casket. I always ask, don't walk away from us. Talk to the mothers. We know better than anyone else. How can you do something for us without us?
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Next speaker, please.
Tom Gilberti. Disappointment. Realizing a family member's toxic. Seeing a favorite actor just destruct on stage. Now, 5 years after this political process in San Francisco has reached a point where it's just a democratic disappointment. This party is just a disappointment. This election is just a disappointment. To have reached this affair when we only have one mayor running. But it could be something different because it's a ranked choice election. So we don't know what may happen here. We may have something of a change. A pause and a change of direction. It would have worked for the Titanic. Maybe it'll work for San Francisco. I hope the next mayor has a housing plan as good as this. 5 points. Ellis evictions banned with an appeal. Number 2, no cause, no fault evictions banned with an appeal. Number 3, market rate rents frozen. If you can find a long-term resident, their rents reset. Everybody in the city, one rent control outfit. 4, the renter's dividend. If you're living in a renter's apartment and your building is sold, you get a piece of that action, a piece of that price. Some of that money comes to you. 5, new residential buildings, 30% open to the world, open market. Next 10% for if you are a 30-year resident in the local zip codes and you're older than 65, move our seniors up. Next 15% come from if you lived in the area for 20 years, you could be 21. Those 15% units are for you. The next, there's a 5, out of time.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Someday.
How you doing? My name is Raymond Whitley. I'm the youth of Bayview. I'm that so-called thug they have on the news. But let me let you know something. I'm a city and county employee, and I'm still here trying to figure out how am I going to take care of my kids if I have to leave the city? How am I going to get to work if I have to leave the city? I think the affordable housing thing is just absurd, and you guys talk about the unemployment rate, but where's the opportunity at for us? It's never an opportunity for us. I'm out there every day. This is my first time meeting y'all because, like I said, they're not involved with the community. They're not there. I haven't seen nobody, ever. And I've been there for 26 years, around. I done played basketball everywhere, programs, everywhere. I done did a lot in the community and never seen a face in here. Yeah, I've seen y'all. You guys are familiar. I walked in City Hall plenty of times. But like I said, the affordable housing situation and with the youth, and it just has to be more opportunity for us. And like I said, everybody's thinking about that dollar and not thinking about us. And like I keep hearing people say, we for the people. Who? You're not for the youth? I can tell you that. So I'm just here. I didn't have a speech or nothing. I just wanted to tell you what I'm going through right now.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
I'd like to put this up on the TV and read from 2 Kings, chapter 2.
SFG TV, please.
Make some comments. And it came to pass when the Lord would take up Elijah into heaven by a whirlwind that Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. And Elijah said unto Elisha, Tarry here, I pray thee, for the Lord hath sent me to Bethel. And Elisha said, Oh, that I might have my request, and that God would grant me the thing that I long for the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me, and that which I was afraid of is come unto me. And he prayed this secretly. It's not in the scriptures, but he knew that he wanted to be the next prophet. He really did, and he wasn't worthy. But God turned the heart of Elijah to ask him what he wanted, and he said, I want the double portion, and he got what he asked for. Now, I would like to say this, if the Lord, and this is dreamland, he's not going to do it, but if he asked me what I wanted, you know what I'd ask for? I'd ask for the day and hour of the return of Christ. I got on George Norrie's Coast to Coast on the 12th, and he was interviewing a guy who wrote The Harbinger. The Harbinger is a book about the Shemitahs. The Shemitah is the Sabbath year. His name is Jonathan Cahn, and he said 1994 is the Sabbath year. And it's really frustrating when you call talk shows because you don't get enough time. You can't put the host on hold. And they hit the trap door on me before I could explain to him that there's no authority. The rabbis have no authority to alter what God said in Exodus 12. And God said that the calendar would begin in the spring with the Passover, not on Tishri in the 7th month. Okay, so I don't know who finagled them to believe you start the year early, but it's 6 months early. So the Sabbath year doesn't start till the spring. We start in January, they start in the spring. And the Sabbath year of spring of 1995, okay, to the Sabbath year would end in the spring of 1996. And that's very important to know because, as Jonathan Cahn rightly said, the exile in Babylon was based on a violation of precisely 70 years. Cyrus said, restore and build Jerusalem, and started the 7 weeks.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name's David Lee.
Hi, my name is David Lee. I'd written a little speech, something about us of America. That means us of America, and that means all the street people. I mean, look what we're doing. I've walked around almost every district in this town on foot, and there's so much housing. I think people that have been living there. So what if they're not pretty? I mean, painting a pretty picture is put it in a museum, not on our houses. I've always said this city is old; it needs a bath, but not at the expense of senior citizens, veterans, people. I was evicted from my home of 10 years, and I was doing nothing wrong. They said I was a nuisance, and I don't think I'm a nuisance, and I think it's got to stop. It's got to stop. I mean, we can live together, rich and poor. It's going to be a war again, World War III, rich versus poor. We don't want that. We really don't. So, Mr. Campos, I really respect him because he really gets in there and fights for homeless people. The people of the street, they live on the street, but they shouldn't have to. But that's basically, I've got a speech for him because he really gets my heart. And you people really need to think about it because you have nice homes. I think everyone in this city deserves a nice home. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, everybody. I just want to say that it's kind of sad to witness this debacle that we have going in front of my eyes. All it takes to have white supremacy, white privilege perpetrated within our community in San Francisco, the so-called progressive community, is to have 3 white people, 2 black people, and 1 Asian woman. That's enough to take and kill the soul of San Francisco. That's enough to put legislation on the board that is race baiting, that is a witch hunt, a political lynching of a Mexican man, an immigrant, a person that probably never accomplished much in his life, but because our white police chief did nothing to retrieve that gun and a white woman was killed. Oh my God, a white woman killed. Everybody stopped the press. This young black man was killed in San Francisco. His mother's been lobbying to find his murderer. People do nothing in San Francisco because he's a black man. Black lives in this chamber do not matter. And it's sad that San Francisco has so many sellouts, black sellouts, and others, Jewish sellouts. And I'm a Jewish conservative man. I'm gay too. So it hurts me when other gay Jewish men act so insensitive to the needs of children and babies and immigrants. It's pathetic that 6 people stood together as a cabal against the hard-working people of this city that built and maintained this city. But no, you're prostitutes. You will go and sell your political vote to the highest bidder, and you don't even ask for lube afterwards. Disgusting.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to provide public comment at this time? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Madam Clerk, can we please go to the reference to committee, without reference to committee items, please?
Items 26 and 27 are being considered for immediate adoption without committee reference. A single roll call vote may enact these items. If a member objects, a matter may be severed and considered separately.
Would anyone like to sever any items on the adoption without committee reference items? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
On items 26 and 27, Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener. Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos. Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell.
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Those motions are approved unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please read the in memoriams?
Yes, today's meeting will be adjourned in memory of the following beloved individuals. On behalf of Supervisor Wiener, for the late Marjorie G. Jang, and on behalf of Supervisor Marr, for the late Miss Dora Yuet Yuang Wong.
Colleagues, this brings us to the end of our agenda. Madam Clerk, is there any further business before us?
That concludes our business for today, Madam President.
Thank you, colleagues. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.